What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
10 Shish. Chapter 271 You are much braver than the body. Part 5 Please subscribe. Are you crazy? The gap between physical skills has long been judged high or low. The only thing your sage body can do better than him is regeneration. Quote. Uchiha Madara frowned. Whether it's a cyborg or the original Senju Hashirama, they should all know that Carl is invincible in the field of martial arts. Even if they work together, it is impossible to overwhelm Carl in physical skills. You should be clear, if you can hold Mr. Carl in a fight, or in a physical confrontation, what does it mean? Cyborg Senju Hashirama said in a deep voice. He doesn't know ninjutsu, and he doesn't know illusion. If we can compete with him in physical skills, even for a while, our chances of winning will be increased by at least 30%. Uchiha Madara nodded, then changed the subject. The problem is that the ninja world is so big that no one can compete with Carl in fat body jutsu. His tone was extremely firm. That was before. Cyborg Senju Hashirama smiled at Uchiha Madara and stepped forward. Are you serious? Carl's fist is not a joke. No matter how strong your sage body's regeneration ability is, if you rub it a few times, you will die. Uchiha Madara's expression darkened. Sorry, I didn't expect to be beaten. Senju Hashirama smiled lightly, and white mist floated from all parts of his body. Hashirama, you. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara's Sengoku Rinnegan flashed a touch of inexplicable color. You are much braver than the main body. Carl paused, and looked at the android Senju Hashirama in front of him with great interest. Of course, I'm stronger than ever. Cyborg Senju Hashirama clapped his hands together. Sage Art Boil Style Mode. Boom. With his body as the center, a scorching air wave suddenly surged. Boil Style. Carl's eyes sparkled. Mr. Carl, you don't think that the task of assassinating you is a temporary idea of the people behind me? Senju Hashirama, BFCG, continuously exudes white mist all over his body, and the temperature of the surrounding air is affected and keeps rising. Of course not. Before you were created, the Otsutsuki behind you should have killed the old man. This is how things that you were created to happen. Quote. Carl said lightly. In this case, you should know that I have been preparing to defeat, no, assassinate you as early as Tobirama was alive. To this end, I have spent decades. So, one last reminder, don't compare Senju Hashirama of the past with me. I am him, but he is not as strong as me. The cyborg Senju Hashirama grasped 5 fingers, and circles of terrifying shock waves suddenly exploded around his palm. With the air in his hands, Fangfo is no longer an invisible thing, but has become a lake that can be manipulated at will. This is one of the tricks I prepared for your body art, please taste it. After the low, chilling voice fell, Senju Hashirama had disappeared in place. Boom. The ground he was standing on just now collapsed violently and shattered. At the same time, he had already rolled up a violent and extremely ear-piercing sonic boom, flashing to Carl at an unimaginable speed and blasting 10 punches on Carl's chest. Boom. It was obviously just a punch of flesh and blood, but the moment it landed on Carl, Uchiha Madara's face changed drastically on the spot. Kilometer terrain, instantly rewritten. With just one punch, the area where the 3 of them were located has already shown irregular destruction. Stretching for kilometers, crisscrossing cracks. The collapsed pit, and stone pillars rising from the ground like hills. All of this was caused by a single punch from the cyborg Senju Hashirama. How could he have such amazing physical skills? Uchiha Madara was taken aback, and Sengoku Rinnegan stared intently at the android Senju Hashirama. At this moment, he just realized that his understanding of the artificial man Senju Hashirama in front of him was really too one-sided. It is not without reason that Shion would send the other party to assassinate Carl. After all, after Senju Hashirama was created, there was a gap of decades, and the long decades of Senju Hashirama were spent on how to kill Carl, on top. Decades of blank period are enough to make Senju Hashirama a huge change, and this change is unknown to him. Raise the boil-style chakra to the limit, and burst out the ultimate blow in one breath. After Carl took a punch from the android Senju Hashirama, he glanced at the ruined terrain around him. Such destructive power. Whether it is Uchiha Madara in front of you or Senju Hashirama in the past, you can only do it when Susanoo and Wooden Golem are turned on. But now, Senju Hashirama, the cyborg in front of him, did it with one punch. It's the limit, yes, but it's not a blow. The face of the artificial human Senju Hashirama was flushed, and his skin even showed signs of burns, but he healed within seconds. It turns out that a ninja who masters boil style can only unleash a single blow, but you have a sage body that surpasses Hashirama's body, and the boil style chakra that has been upgraded to ultimate destroys the body, and you just ignore it. With the regenerative power of sage body, you can maintain this limitless strength unscrupulously, coupled with the increase of Shanshu chakra, your body has a destructive power comparable to Wooden Golem. Carl's eyes flashed with understanding. As expected of Mr. Carl, you can see through it at a glance. Cyborg Senju Hashirama nodded. This is my sage art boil style pattern. After speaking, he raised his foot and kicked Carl. Chapter 272 Amazing. Please subscribe to the 6th update. Boom. The artificial man Senju Hashirama's kick hadn't hit Carl yet, and just slashed through the air, triggering a shock cannon like a rampaging angry dragon. Amazing. Watching the oncoming blaster, Carl took the android Senju Hashirama up another notch. Decades of preparation, just to kill yourself today. Shion did indeed create a monster, a cyborg Senju Hashirama that far exceeds the original Hashirama. But yes, even if the main body Hashirama is not dead, it would be terrible to look for one thing and spend decades planning, preparing, and working hard. The old man is also a little more serious, as a reward for your hard work, dancing. Facing the impact cannon that pierced through the air, capable of crushing mountains and causing waterfalls to flow backward, Karl opened his right hand without dodging, like a giant spirit god who came out of a fairy tale, with a brutal posture, violently the force of the attack forcefully slapped the shotgun. He didn't dodge, he didn't use Superman 6, he didn't even use Haki. Facing the android Senju Hashirama who cast the Sage Art Boil style mode, he directly returned the past with absolute power. How strong is your blaster? It's a pity that the old man's palm is stronger. Boom. As Karl's right palm was slapped like the palm of a giant spirit god, the impact like the roar of a dragon was shattered abruptly. He directly transformed into the leg of the android Senju Hashirama with equal strength. It's not over yet. Seeing this, the artificial man Senju Hashirama was not discouraged. After all, he knew how powerful the man he was facing was. That's the man who would want to kill Shion who created himself. In his memory, you are the first person who can make Xuanmeng have such a strong killing intent. It was exactly the same, even if all the memories and emotions about Karl were lost in his mind, he didn't dare to underestimate the man in front of him. Sage Art Boil style mode unrivaled power. The artificial man Senju Hashirama roared angrily, the white mist wrapped around his body became thicker, his face, and even the skin all over his body became more red. It is conceivable that Boil-style chakra's damage to the body has been promoted to this level, but he completely ignored it, and directly used the regeneration ability of Sage Body and the enhancement of the body by the fairy technique chakra. Although there is a kind of fire all over the body at all times, whether it is muscles, blood vessels, internal organs, or bones, no, it is the severe pain of boiling water, but in exchange for it is enough strength and speed to fight Karl in progress. Boom. I saw the artificial man Senju Hashirama roll up a terrifying wave, bursting out at an unbelievable speed that even Uchiha Madara flashed to Karl's back, and his fists went out to sea like twin dragons, directly hitting Karl's back. Facing the double fists of the android Senju Hashirama, Karl could dodge or defend, but he didn't do that. Instead, he turned around instantly, and directly hit the android Senju Hashirama with 2 fists for 2 fists, and shot at himself. On the coming fists. At this moment, in the eyes of Uchiha Madara, the 2 people who started the unprecedented martial arts fight were no longer human beings, and they were like a wooden golem and a Susanoo fighting at close range. No, it is scarier than wooden golem and Susanoo. Even if the body is not as good as wooden golem, it is not as good as Susan, but when the fists of the 2 collide, the violent air waves are like waves of tsunami waves, tearing the atmosphere, rolling up huge dust and countless gravels towards the surroundings lean away. Entrenched above the heads of the 2, the clouds and mist above the sky directly collapsed, and a bottomless and appalling vortex pit appeared. The fist collision of the 2 not only rewritten the area, but also pierced the sky. Caught it. Cyborg Senju Hashirama couldn't help but constrict his pupils as he looked at Karl, who was firmly resisting his fists with fists. He knows better than anyone how strong his fists are. Ask for flowers. Before coming to Karl, he had tested it. The destructive power of the 2 fists has been raised to the limit, enough to smash the surface of a kilometer area. To be able to fight with him in close quarters is really beyond his expectation. It was just a short fight, and the joy in his heart was not as good as that of Uchiha Madara dancing with all his strength to please him in the previous 4th Ninja World War. The 6th update is completed. Please subscribe and support. I am very grateful. I am very grateful. Jong. Under the long laugh that swept across the sky, Karl opened his clenched fists and grabbed the artificial man Senju Hashirama like a dragon's claws. I have to say that the artificial man Senju Hashirama really brought him a great surprise. The smile on Karl's face widened. It was just a movement of interlocking index fingers, centering on the 2 of them. The shock wave like a missile explosion had already cleaned the nearby area hundreds of meters away. Seeing this, the artificial man Senju Hashirama's heart sank. He didn't dodge, or it was too late to dodge. He could only open his hands, one by one, through the finger gaps of Karl's palm, and clasp the 10 fingers of the opponent's hands fiercely. Click. His laughter was full of long-lost joy and excitement. Boom. Karl grinned slightly. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's face darkened. He could only bite the bullet, regardless of physical damage, frantically created the fairy art boil style chakra to urge power. Come again. This man, he hasn't used Haki yet. In the next moment, he exerted force with his 10 fingers, and released a terrifying power that surpassed the scope of human beings. He knew that if he didn't do this, not only would the 10 fingers of both hands be crushed, but he had already predicted that after the palms were crushed, Karl would take advantage of the situation and take his 2 arms directly from his shoulders. Rip it up and down. Why do you have thoughts that you can't handle? Chapter 273 Unparalleled in Ancient and Modern Times, Physical Combat Part 1 for subscription. This is simply an unparalleled physical combat. Stronger than Uchiha Madara, seeing 2 people fighting close to each other, also felt scalp numb. What made him even more angry was that at this moment, he found that he couldn't intervene. Without the physical skills of the 2, unless he directly performs indiscriminate ninjutsu and pupil technique attacks, he can't intervene at all. It's not an illusion, Karl's physical skills have really become stronger. How on earth did he do it? In such a short period of time, the strength of the body has improved by leaps and bounds. Uchiha Madara Sengoku Rinnegan stared at Carl. Sage Mode's perception, coupled with Sengoku Rinnegan's insight, let him clearly see that Carl's strength, speed, 977, defense, etc. are more than a notch better than when he fought with him not long ago. This is also what makes him unbelievable. Even for a person who has never practiced before, it is impossible for a person to show a geometric level of improvement in physical strength within a few days when he first started practicing. Not to mention that Carl's physical strength has already reached the ceiling of the ninja world, and it is basically impossible to improve it. Even if it can be improved, even if it is only a slight improvement, it will be piled up over the years. Physical skills like Carl have reached the ceiling of the ninja world, but within a few days there has been a dramatic improvement, let alone seen it, he has never heard of it. Interesting. Just when Uchiha Madara was in doubt, the physical confrontation between Carl and the artificial man Senju Hashirama also reached a fever pitch. Facing the artificial human Senju Hashirama, who did not show any weakness, clasped his hands tightly together, let out 4 dragon claws, and smashed each other, the smile on Carl's face became more and more cheerful, and he could vent from 10 fingers at the same time. The majestic power is becoming more and more terrifying. As he continued to increase his strength, the air surrounding the two of them began to become thicker and thicker. At first it was like a flowing lake, but gradually it became as thick as mercury, and finally it was like boiled water. The hot water, coupled with the white mist constantly emitted from the body of the artificial man Senju Hashirama, made the gravity of the area where the two of them were located seem to have been directly rewritten. Not only was the airflow continuously surging in all directions like boiling water, but the ground under the two of them was also constantly shaking and cracking. As the intensity of the vibrations became higher and higher, the cracks extended farther and farther, and Uchiha Madara, who could not intervene, even had the feeling that the entire surface of the land of fire was shaking. Chi. Gradually, when the strength of the two people's confrontation seemed to rise to a certain critical point, deafening roars of thunder began to be heard in the air, followed by shocking and frightening lightning burst out one after another. What kind of power is this? Cyborg Senju Hashirama has a constantly changing expression. At first, although he was shocked, he could barely match Carl's strength. But as Carl continued to increase his strength, his expression became more and more solemn, and in the end it had turned livid. His 10 fingers, and even the entire palm had cracked skin, exposing broken blood vessels, muscles, and bones. Not only that, the legs that were originally rooted like tree roots in the earth began to bend continuously, and the body gradually sank. Before, he was still standing, but in less than 10 seconds, facing Carl's endless and terrifying power like the current of the sea, he could no longer maintain an even match, and was directly suppressed and retreated steadily. Click. In the end, the artificial man Senju Hashirama's feet could no longer bear the shocking force from Carl's hands, so he bent directly, and his body knelt on the ground. Is it the limit? Strength can't beat it. You can only compete with him for speed or physical fitness. The android Senju Hashirama turned pale. Physical injuries, sage body can recover in an instant, but in the face of Carl's overwhelming physical strength, his sage body can't do anything. Is it just speed? Carl looked down at Senju Hashirama, the man-made man who was oppressed by him and knelt on the ground. His eyes flashed red, and after he directly sensed the fluctuation of the opponent's thinking, the smile on his face showed a hint of sarcasm. Immediately afterwards, he raised his right foot in lightning, and kicked straight towards the artificial human Senju Hashirama who was suppressed and could only half kneel on the ground, unable to move. Not good. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's pupils shrank. Facing Carl's sudden kick, he reflexively wanted to dodge, but his hands were clasped, his body was pressed to the ground, and he couldn't move at all, let alone dodge. Especially Carl's kicks are faster than lightning. All he could feel was a flash in front of his eyes, his chest had been submerged by a majestic force, and the internal organs of his upper body were damaged to varying degrees under a puffing sound, and his ribs broke at the same time. If it weren't for the strong resilience of the sage body, it would have begun to heal and regenerate itself the moment the body was hurt. If it was Uchiha Madara who suffered this kick, even if it was a different body, the injury would be serious. But even so, he still felt tight in his chest, his upper body was in unbearable pain, and his brain was 4.3 fainting for a while. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he was not only in midair, but also made his pupils constrict. What surprised him was that Carl not only caught up with him, but also hovered above him steadily, with his body, eyes parallel to each other. Sage Art Boyle style mode painful feet. Looking at Carl who was close at hand, Senju Hashirama, the android, was so shocked that his whole body had goosebumps. Driven by horror and anxiety, he almost instinctively raised his foot and kicked it. Boom. The roaring air waves swept across the sky like a typhoon passing by, but the face of the artificial man Senju Hashirama was not happy, but a touch of anxiety flashed across it. Chapter 274 The Old Man is Equally Confident in His Own Speed Part 2 Please subscribe. Empty kick. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's heart is sinking to the bottom. After waking up to that kick, he had already used his sage mode perception. In theory, it was impossible to kick this kick empty, but now he actually kicked it in the air. He knew that the only explanation was that Carl's reaction and speed were far above his. It's useless even if sage mode perceives it. It's not just strength, the old man is equally confident in his own speed. The moment the android Senju Hashirama kicked the air, Carl's voice suddenly echoed in his ears. But before he came back to his senses, there was a terrifying force from his back, which made him feel like he had been slashed by a full-body Susanoo. Boom. With a loud noise, surrounded by violent air waves, Senju Hashirama, an artificial human in midair, spat out a mouthful of blood. The human was like a rocket soaring into the sky, instantly rising hundreds of meters from its original position. Behind, after being punched and kicked by Carl one after another, the face, clothes and trousers of the android Senju Hashirama were covered with blood, but he endured the severe pain and did not dare to distract himself for a moment. Because he had already sensed that, after Carl punched him hundreds of meters into the sky, he had already broken through the air and caught up with him in an instant at a terrifying speed beyond the speed of sound. Call out. Sensing Carl's every move, he suddenly turned around, like an eagle with 9-day wings, condescendingly punching Carl behind him. Boom. As soon as he punched out, a storm-like air wave enveloped the 100-meter area of the sky, but there was no one in his line of sight and within the range covered by his fist power. Behind, the artificial man Senju Hashirama just had an idea in his mind. He dodged his foot at a speed of teleportation, and Carl, who moved behind him, had already hit his neck with a backhanded elbow. Boom. The artificial human Senju Hashirama's neck sank, his eyes went black, and he was like a falling meteor, carrying a fiery red air wave tail from the sky hundreds of meters high and sitting straight on the ground. With a loud bang, the ground surface was smashed to pieces on the spot, shaking up sand, dust and mud hundreds of meters high, and there was a huge crater hundreds of meters deep on the ground. Speed, reaction, and explosive power are two different in terms of body functions. Uchiha Madara brought the power of perception and the insight of the eyes to the ultimate level, and had a panoramic view of the physical skills of the two. And it was so, he saw clearly. It's not so much a fight as Carl unilaterally beating the android Senju Hashirama. The power is beyond compare. Can't catch up with the speed. Can't keep up with the reaction. Apart from relying on the unimaginable resilience to bear Carl's heavy hammer again and then hang his life, the artificial human Senju Hashirama has no way at all. As the gap that big. In the deep pit, the android Senju Hashirama immediately got up and looked towards the sky the moment he fell to the ground. With his perception and eyes, he just realized that Carl was at a high altitude. But the moment he got up, Carl had disappeared into the sky and stood in front of him out of thin air. Bigger than you think. Carl spread his hands and said as a matter of course. Stop looking down on people. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's expression sank, and he raised his hand to strike directly. However, he had just raised his arm halfway, and Carl standing in front of him not only disappeared in place, but also came behind him. It doesn't matter whether it is the main body Hashirama or the cyborg Hashirama. Want to compete with the old man? You are still far away. Carl lowered his head and left a sentence in the ear of Senju Hashirama, an artificial man with shrinking pupils, and then pointed a finger at the back of his head. Even a broken neck can regenerate, what about the brain? If the old man beats the back of your head into a paste, I wonder if Sage Body can save you. A slightly playful voice fell, and surging power surged out from one finger. A replica came here with killing intent, the old man couldn't think of a reason not to kill him. For example, what the Six Kings shot just now was not the artificial man Senju Hashirama, but an unrelated enemy. Uchiha Madara already knew it was bad when Carl raised his hand and pointed at the android Senju Hashirama. However, he does not have the time-space pupil technique, nor does he have the speed of the android Senju Hashirama, nor does 807 have the speed of Carl. A-hole. Carl, he's Hashirama. Carl withdrew his fingers, his face not fluctuating at all. Even with all his strength, his speed was astonishingly fast, but when he rushed in front of Carl, Hashirama, the cyborg master, had already been swallowed by the light and ugly gun. Hashirama. But in fact, in his eyes, the artificial human Senju Hashirama is an irrelevant enemy. Without any movement, just a finger released a shock wave that caused the tsunami to recede and the ground to shatter. No, it was a shock gun. Six King Spear. Damn it, I told you not to fight with him. For the old man, he is just a copy of Hashirama, the kind that doesn't even have the memories and emotions related to the old man. Hearing Uchiha Madara's words, the ever-spreading magic chakra became more violent. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara was stunned for a moment, and then his expression suddenly became ferocious. The android Senju Hashirama didn't respond. The man was overwhelmed by the blaster and disappeared from Carl's sight in an instant. To you, he may be Hashirama. As he spoke, he unleashed the powerful celestial chakra. Chapter 275 When did I, Madara, need you to teach me how to do things? Part 3 Please subscribe. Originally, Uchiha Madara thought that after Senju Hashirama was defeated or died in battle, he would leave without hesitation. After all, he will not listen to Shion's mercy. Even if Sixian gave him this body, this pair of three-pointed jade rinagons, in his opinion, the purpose of staying to deal with Carl was purely because of the artificial Senju Hashirama, apart from not being willing to lose. Once the artificial human Senju Hashirama died, there was no need for him to stay. But when he saw the brain of the android Senju Hashirama being swallowed by Carl's Six King gun, his first reaction was not to leave, but to fight in anger. You really think of him as Hashirama? Sometimes, it's really hard for an old man to understand what you're thinking. When a living Senju Hashirama is in front of you, you can draw your sword. When a dead Senju Hashirama is buried in a coffin, you can also dig a grave and dig out your heart. Instead, it's an artificial human, Senju Hashirama, and you treat him like a treasure. Carl looked at Uchiha Madara a little surprised. Obviously knowing that this is a replica, this is an artificial human, but the appearance of Uchiha Madara is obviously treating this counterfeit as the original. When did I, Uchiha Madara, need you to teach me how to do things? What if I am the real Hashirama, and what if he is the false Hashirama? Deep down in Uchiha Madara's heart, he doesn't know that this is an artificial human, but he thinks of the original Hashirama who has been dug and heartbroken by himself, and then thinks of this artificial human Hashirama who interceded for him time and time again in front of Sixian. Under the influence of guilt, gratitude, etc., he finally couldn't help but regard the artificial human Senju Hashirama and the main body Senju Hashirama as one person. No way. Whether it's real or home, left and right are just sending you to meet Ben Senju Hashirama. In this way, there are two Hashirama in the Pure Land, both the main body and the artificial human. I think you should be happier there. Backquote. Carl heard this and said without thinking. If it was before, he didn't mind, and if conditions permit, put some water to keep Uchiha Madara alive, even though he knew that Uchiha Madara had always had an infinite Tsukuyomi plan in his heart. But after digging out the body Senju Hashirama's grave and digging out his heart, he only has a faint, extremely pure murderous intent towards Uchiha Madara. Don't make killing me an easy thing to do. Carl, you are not the only one who is making progress these days, I am also not standing still. Quote. Uchiha Madara opened the three-god Jade Rinnegan, and with a lot of magic chakra injected into the eyes also produced incredible changes. After all, for thousands of years, regardless of Rinnegan or Sharingan, except for the Sage of Six Paths, Indra's descendants, including Indra himself, have basically never mastered natural energy. Naturally, there is no fusion of Sage Mode and Immortal Eye. Until this era, Uchiha Madara met the artificial man Senju Hashirama by chance. Not only did he change his clothes, but he also mastered the Sage Mode of the Wetbone Forest. The combination of Immortal Power and Immortal Eyes. In this era of Berserk, finally ushered in the first show of this power product. The old man knows. The pupil power of your eyes is very good. Rinnegan and Sharingan are no longer independent, but one with each other. Quote. Carl glanced at Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan. He was clearly praising him, but his tone was neither salty nor weak, and there was no taste of appreciation at all. As long as you know. After Senju Hashirama finished speaking, a blue beam of light shot up from his body. Under the cover of this huge beam of light that covers hundreds of meters and penetrates straight into the sky, skeletons, internal organs, meridians, flesh and blood, facial tissues and other body tissues continue to appear. In a blink of an eye, a Susanoo wearing a blue armor, exuding a destructive aura, 1,000 meters high, and holding a tailed beast appeared in Carl's sight. Quote. It's much bigger than before. Carl nodded. Sengoku Rinnegan is indeed quite different from the previous Rinnegan. Uchiha Madara's tone was cold, and he slowly raised his right hand. Suddenly, there was a slightly hurried coughing sound from behind. In his sage mode just now, he couldn't perceive the breath of the artificial man Senju Hashirama at all. The artificial man Senju Hashirama glanced at the sky behind, which was punched an atmospheric hole more than a kilometer, forced a smile on his face, and then spread his right hand, a black sphere floating in the palm of his hand. Truth-seeking ball. One hides the boil-style mode, and now hides a truth-seeking ball. Whether it is the main body or the cyborg Senju Hashirama, he found that anyone named Hashirama likes to hide. It's also true, to Lee's, that he thought for a while that the android Senju Hashirama was dead. Uchiha Madara looked back and saw Senju Hashirama, the artificial man, clutching the back of his head, coming from behind with palpitations on his face. One hides sage mode. Madara, wait, it's not just about getting bigger. Uchiha Madara was startled at first, and then his expression became extremely gloomy. Hashirama, are you alive? Without this thing, I would have been useless even if I didn't die just now. How much ability do you guys hide? Especially Uchiha Madara's three-hook Jade Rinnegan, not only one, but a pair. This scene made him feel incredible. Chapter 276 The Combination of Senju and Uchiha, Ashura and Indra's Power Part 4 Please subscribe. Madara, this shouldn't be the point of the question. At this point, shouldn't you be just happy that I survived Mr. Carl's finger? Cyborg Senju Hashirama smiled sarcastically. As a cyborg who has inherited the memories and emotions of his body, he naturally knows why Uchiha Madara is so angry. Speaking of which, this is the main body Senju Hashirama's pot. If he hadn't been hiding sage mode before the Valley of the End, Uchiha Madara in front of him wouldn't have been furious when he saw him hiding his clumsiness and showing a new technique. Not just truth-seeking ball. If it's just truth-seeking ball, the most he can do is help him carry the old one-finger six-king spear without dying. This cyborg Senju Hashirama can also master a kind of celestial art that can freely control the breath, coupled with the cover of the truth-seeking ball, so the old observation Haki just now can't perceive his existence. Carl glanced at the android Senju Hashirama, his eyes flashed red. Although the man-made man 283 has performed the fairy art of controlling breath, the old man can't perceive his breath, and even his thinking can't perceive it, but it doesn't affect the prediction of the future. It's amazing. This should also be the fairy art prepared for the old observation Haki all these years. Although it is also Hashirama, it has to be said that this artificial Hashirama seems to be more talented than the main body Hashirama. The corners of Carl's mouth slightly raised after he understood the magic of the artificial man Senju Hashirama. It has to be said that just fighting till now, this artificial human Senju Hashirama has brought him surprises many times. Whether it's the boil-style mode against him, or this kind of fairy art against observation Haki, they are all abilities that he didn't expect. I'll settle accounts with you after the battle is over. Uchiha Madara glanced at Carl, who was close at hand. Although he was a bit unwilling, he could only let Senju Hashirama go first. Okay, if we can survive. The cyborg Senju Hashirama raised his hands, smiled mischievously, and then his expression froze. The opponent is Iron Fist. In the fight just now, he has already realized why the man in front of him is so unfathomable in his eyes, and Shion, who has no idea where the limit is so afraid of Carl, and he must kill him quickly. He has already used the Sage mode, and also turned on the Sage Art Boil style mode, but he can still only be beaten, and he can only survive by relying on the self-healing ability of the Sage body. Even at the end, if he hadn't hidden a truth-seeking ball in one hand, his head would either have been beaten into a paste, or it would have been torn apart like a smashed watermelon. After personally experiencing the ferocious power of Carl's fists, even with the help of Uchiha Madara who is stronger than before, even if he has secretly prepared for this day for decades, he still does not have absolute confidence. No, it is lack of confidence, that's right. Not to mention killing Carl, or winning Carl, whether he can survive this battle is still unknown. Survive. Uchiha Madara was silent for a while upon hearing this. Thinking of the battle BFBD, not long ago, before the start, how arrogant he was. The results of it. After a battle, he completely slept all the way. No matter how many whole cards he has, no matter how much strength he hides, no matter how many pupil skills he shows, they are all smashed by Carl in the end. We will win. After a while, Uchiha Madara suddenly raised his head, and the three-god Jade Rinnegan flashed beyond doubt. Why do you say that? Cyborg Senju Hashirama saw Uchiha Madara's words so firmly, I can't do anything. With the combined power of Senju and Uchiha, Ashura and Indra, there is no opponent that cannot be defeated. Hashirama, looking at the right hand extended towards him by the artificial man Senju Hashirama, Uchiha Madara's eyes were in a daze. Indeed, especially Uchiha Madara, whose pupil power surpassed that of Indra at its peak. The same eyes, the same face, the same movements. I was a little absent-minded. Uchiha Madara paused every word, his voice full of confidence. The two represent the power of Uchiha and Senju respectively, as well as Indra and Ashura, because they themselves hold the bloodlines no less than Ashura and Indra. Even what Ashura doesn't have, he has. The android Senju Hashirama walked up to Uchiha Madara, and slowly stretched out his right tail towards him. We will win. This scene reminded him of the scene when Senju Hashirama reached out to him for the first time. In this generation, the two of them are no longer Uchiha Madara, nor Senju Hashirama, nor are they Indra Chakra reincarnation, nor Ashura Chakra reincarnation. In addition to not having 9 tails, Ashura has, he basically has. Such as Wood Style, such as Truth-Seeking Ball. And, although he dare not say that he has surpassed Ashura who has received the inheritance of Sage of 6 Paths, he is not inferior to Ashura in blood. Senju and Uchiha Madara, Ashura and Indra. The cyborg Senju Hashirama murmured, and the brilliance in his eyes became brighter. Madara, you are right. Chapter 277 The two poles return to one, everything is omnipresent. 6 Paths Part 5 Please subscribe. It's no wonder that Uchiha Madara is like this, knowing that this is a replica, an artificial human, and still sinking into it. For him, this is Senju Hashirama, which is composed of memories, emotions, and guilt and other emotions. After all, Uchiha Madara has lost everything now, and the appearance of the artificial man Senju Hashirama is a life-saving straw for him. Quote. Carl didn't speak, just watched the two of them quietly. Not to mention Uchiha Madara, even Senju Hashirama's gesture touched him a little. Because that year, the truce between Senju and Uchiha was witnessed by him, or under his auspices. After all, even if the main body Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara have the intention to make peace, but the hatred between the Senju family and the other members of the Uchiha family is too heavy, and a person who can hold the scene is needed as a witness to preside over all this. This also led to the reconciliation and alliance between the two clans of Uchiha and Senju, the god of ninja and Shira of the ninja world. Humph. After being dazed for a moment, Uchiha Madara suddenly snorted coldly, but stretched out his left hand very sincerely, holding the right hand extended towards him by the artificial man Senju Hashirama. I don't want to fight with you, I just want to figure out something important. In the Sengoku era, I have always been curious, what is it like to join forces with Senju and Uchiha? Will they be able to beat Carl again after joining forces? It all unraveled today, with Uchiha Madara's haughty cold drink, the Senju chakra belonging to Ashura and Indra, as well as Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama huddled together. Just like the Buddha's natural energy meets chakra, as the two people's fairy arts chakra merge with each other, an unprecedented new change arises spontaneously. This feeling is so powerful. Why is there such a change when I connect with Madara's chakra? Even Mr. Sixian didn't tell me. Or is this why Mr. Sixian thinks that the combination of my power and Madara's can defeat Mr. Carl? Cyborg Senju Hashirama froze. Obviously, the sum of their chakra has not changed, but after the chakra of the two are connected together, an unprecedented change occurs inexplicably. This kind of change is produced in a strong direction. At this moment, he even had an illusion. Together with Uchiha Madara and chakra, the unfathomable in the past, and the deep and shallow Shion is no longer so invincible. At least, it is only the first form of Shion. At this moment it is no longer a mountain with no end in sight and no top to see. When the two poles are united, all things can be obtained. Maybe this sentence left by Sage of 6 Paths back then is not just referring to the simple opening of Rinnegan with the power of Senju and Uchiha. It also refers to the power of Uchiha connected to Senju, Indra connected to Ashura. Unlike the artificial man Senju Hashirama, Uchiha Madara has seen the steel left over from the Sage of Six Paths in the family, even though it has been modified by Black Zetsu, but he still knows more than the artificial man Senju Hashirama. Although it is shocking that the combination of the artificial man Senju Hashirama will cause such a strange change, it is not as ignorant as the artificial man Senju Hashirama. This chakra, Six Paths. Carl watched the two shake hands, and the magic chakra exuded an extremely powerful chakra that pointed directly at the source of the sacred tree, and his eyes flashed. This kind of chakra, he had already felt when he was performing the natural energy fusion with the body of the Black Sword at Mount Myoboku. Ask for flowers. The chakra in the ninja world seem to be the same, they all come from the same place, the sacred tree. The second level, Otsutsuki Yuya and Otsutsuki Hamura, are the Six Paths brothers. It is quite similar to the chakra on the ninja master, Otsutsuki Yuya. The two can be said to be divided into two by the power of Sage of Six Paths, but in turn, the power of the two is connected, that is, Six Paths, which does not necessarily have the strength of Six Paths, but the essence of chakra is that of Sage of Six Paths. The existence of levels, the difference is only the difference between strength and weakness. Things suddenly got interesting. So it is, Uchiha and Senju, Indra and Ashura, this is Six Paths. The first level, Otsutsuki Kagaya who ate a whole fruit of the sacred tree. Let's not talk about the latter, just talk about Indra and Ashura. The third level, that is, the respective sons and daughters of the Six Paths brothers, such as the two sons of the Sage of Six Paths. Indra and Ashura. Uchiha Madara looked up sharply into Carl's eyes. This power gave him the confidence to defeat Carl. Feeling the power continuously emerging from the body, the long-lost self-confidence and pride resurfaced on his face. He once had the idea that even if it was Sixian, the two of them could win the battle together. Carl pondered for a while, and immediately figured out the reason for the change of Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama at this time. Although not as powerful as Sage of Six Paths, it is very close, at least it belongs to the same chakra. Carl, now you don't seem to be as completely invincible as before. In fact, it is descending level by level, and the levels are distinct. Chapter 278 Carl, are you actually younger? Please subscribe to the 6th update. It's Sunny, Uchiha Madara, you think you're alright again. Facing the confident Uchiha Madara who joined hands with Senju Hashirama and mastered the power of Six Paths, Carl couldn't help laughing. It's not that I think, but it's really better than you. Uchiha Madara raised his right hand, and at the same time the android Senju Hashirama, who was holding both hands with him, also raised his other hand. Sage art wood style the tree world comes. The two hold each other tightly with one hand, and make a mudra with the other hand. With just one seal, the ground with a radius of 10 kilometers was shaking crazily and cracking. In the next second, countless towering trees rose from the ground like miniature god trees. 550. In the blink of an eye, a sea of trees with no end in sight, no boundaries, and a huge breath of life had completely enveloped the three of them. Meet the power of Six Paths. As soon as the sea of trees came out, Uchiha Madara felt an indescribable sense of familiarity, as if something deep in the blood had awakened. He naturally shouted this sentence, and he also figured out that this is the power of Six Paths. Above Uchiha and Senju, Indra and Ashura is only Six Paths. Looking at the endless sea of trees in front of them, both Uchiha Madara and the artificial man Senju Hashirama had an idea in their hearts. This time, they won't lose. Because what they have in their hands is the calendar of Six Paths at the level of Otsutsuki beyond Indra and Ashura. Shish. Driven by the will of the two people full of the belief in victory, after the sea of trees took shape, it immediately looked like an ancient beast awakened. Tens of millions of tree roots swept towards Carl like wooden dragons with teeth and claws. Or whipping like a long whip, or stabbing like a sharp sword, or chopping with a big knife. Every tree root like a wooden dragon has spirituality and life, and it will display its body like a wise ninja. Art, swordsmanship. Facing such horror, with tens of thousands of ninjas attacking him, Carl Fangfo couldn't react, and was directly submerged by the tree roots that blocked the sky and the sun. However, although Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, the androids who performed ninjutsu on such an astonishing scale, were full of confidence, they were not very happy. Is this the body of Mr. Carl's black knife? Our joint attack of wood-style sage art can't shake his body. What kind of ghost did this guy refine with armament Haki's own body? Although the line of sight is submerged by the sea of trees, it is impossible to see everything on the battlefield, but whether it is the artificial human Senju Hashirama or Uchiha Madara, both of them have sage mode, and even after the connection of the two immortal arts chakra, the perception ability of each other has also developed qualitative changes, can perceive many things that could not be perceived before. This is also true, even if the sea of trees attack drowned their sight, they could still perceive Carl's situation at this time. The man seemed to be submerged in the sea of trees, unable to resist, and was directly attacked by tens of thousands of tree roots, but there was no trace of damage from head to toe, and it was said that his breath had weakened in the slightest. Tempest kick broken sea. Fangfo wanted to prove that the two of them had the same idea. 1 second before, Carl was submerged by the sea of trees, but in the next second, chopping waves like water ripples had already surged out from the center of the sea of trees, spreading to a radius of a kilometer in an instant. Click. Wherever the chopping wave passed, countless tree roots were chopped off, and even towering giant trees that pierced into the sky were chopped off in half. When Carl stood up from the smoke and met the eyes of the androids Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara again, they all found that Carl's whole body was covered by a black and blue metallic paint. The two of them could tell at a glance that this was not the hardened armed body, but the body of the Black Knife. So far in the battle, Carl still hasn't used armament haki. Slap. Such an amazing wood style, old. It's the first time I've seen it. I have to say that the cooperation between the two of you really impresses even the old man. Quote. After getting up, Carl glanced at Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Madara from a distance, and then clapped his hands lightly. HMPH, at this time, do you still dare to trust me? If you don't use haki anymore, you will die later. Don't blame me for not giving you a chance. Quote. The breath of vicissitudes, the traces of the years are swept away. Keep your eyes open. Don't blink, no one has seen this before, you are the first. His face and skin seemed to be growing backwards, and the traces of time on his body began to fade away. Haki. Compared with this, I would like you to see something else. Uchiha Madara and the cyborg Senju Hashirama looked at each other, and they both saw surprise in each other's eyes. How so? Uchiha Madara curled her lips unhappily. You, Carl, you're getting younger. No matter who came here at this time, they would only think that he was a young man in his 20s when he saw Carl at first sight. Cyborg Senju Hashirama was also dumbfounded. This is a gift to you for dancing hard today. Carl said mysteriously. Heidao's body was closed, his skin, his face appeared again. Uchiha Madara froze. Under their eyes, Carl, who was in his early 30s, suddenly became younger. Another thing. Carl chuckled, although he was young at first, but looking at 3.1, his face, which is at least in his early 30s, began to change. Chapter 279 I Have Never Been Old Part 1 Please subscribe. Whether it is the artificial man Senju Hashirama, or Uchiha Madara, they all know Carl's age very well. Although his strength looks at the ninja world, he still sits firmly on the #1 throne, but it is undeniable that this Tekken is not young anymore. No matter how strong the physique is, the strength is not affected by the age limit, but the years still left obvious traces on Carl's strong physique. Before, Carl's hair was also a little Madara white, and his face was not bad. He was only in his early 30s, but regardless of the traces of his body that belonged to the years, or the feeling he gave people, it was obvious that it was an experience. A man who has gone through vicissitudes and changed times. No matter how young his body and face are, the era that doesn't belong to this era still directly betrays his real age. But now, Hashirama and Madara, the artificial human beings, can't detect the slightest trace of time from Carl at this time. Face, body, breath, all give people a feeling of youth in their 20s. In particular, Carl's majestic aura, like the rising sun, made the two of them stunned for a while. If the two of them were not familiar with everything about Carl, they would have thought that they were facing a young man who had just grown up, and they would definitely have thought that this was the strongest man who had ruled 2 eras. It's not that the old become young, it's that the old. I've never been old. Carl frowned slightly when he said this. Although there is no mirror or river here, he can't see his face clearly, but he can roughly imagine what he looks like at this time. It was nothing before, but with a young face that was vastly different from the time when he traveled to the ninja world, but he claimed to be old, which made him suddenly feel extremely uncomfortable. What the hell does this happen? Surprised, Uchiha Madara stared at Rinnegan, and her pupils turned to Ultimate, wanting to see the secret of Carl's body changes. But no matter how you look at it, he can't see a trace of Juju, 7 traces of chakra. In other words, this is simply who Carl is. On the contrary, he was in his early 30s before, and his hair with a little Madara's white hair was a deliberate disguise. It's nothing, I just locked up my youth and preserved my appearance when I was 18 years old. Although my body will still age with the passage of time, my aging rate will become extremely slow, at least 10 times slower than that of ordinary people. In other words, although the actual age of the old man is over 70 years old, his physical age is still under 19. Carl's tone was flat and casual, as if he was stating an ordinary matter. But it fell on the ears of Uchiha Madara and the artificial man Senju Hashirama, but it was no less than a deafening thunder, which blasted the two of them until their eyes were staring and their ears were buzzing. Keep your face. Is this something that humans can do? Even my sage body can't resist the invasion of the years. If it is old, it will also age. Cyborg Senju Hashirama mutters to himself. Uchiha Madara didn't speak, but silence is the best response. Even sage body, with its huge vitality, can't resist aging, let alone him. In fact, it is true. Even if his pupil power is better than before, in another 60 or 70 years, he will return to the old Madara from before. Haki shouldn't have this effect. When you were 18 years old, you hadn't trained your body into a black sword, which means that you didn't rely on the black sword to lock your youth and retain your youthful appearance. Quote. Cyborg Senju Hashirama frowns. It really doesn't matter if it's Haki. Carl spread his hands, and didn't mean to hide. It's no secret. With his current strength, no matter how taboo or important things are, he doesn't need to deliberately conceal them. Even if the whole ninja world knows that I can live forever, so what? Does anyone dare to pry into his secret? Anyone dare to hit his mind? Does anyone have this strength? No, you're being clumsy again. Uchiha Madara stared at Carl. At this moment, he found that he had never really understood the man in front of him. It can't be said to be clumsy. In fact, you all know this ability. Quote. Carl watched 400 Uchiha Madara's expression with great interest. We all know. Uchiha Madara and the cyborg Senju Hashirama looked at each other, and they both saw blankness in each other's eyes. 8. Carl spat out 2 words. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Uchiha Madara retorted without thinking. Finger pistol, tempest kick, shave, moonwalk, paper arts, iron body, and the famous Superman 6 styles in the ninja world have long been known to everyone. But none of these 6 styles are related to what you said to lock youth and retain appearance. Quote. Cyborg Senju Hashirama shook his head. No, it's 6 styles. People in the world, including us, think that the 6 forms are just 6 superhuman techniques with different functions, but they ignore the behind the 6 forms, or the deeper extension techniques. Hashirama, have you forgotten? When Uchiha Madara's gaze inadvertently swept across the back of the head of the android Senju Hashirama, Sengoku Rinnegan suddenly flashed. Just now you almost died in one of his 6 moves, but it wasn't due to any of the 6 moves. Chapter 280 I Am Strong, creating the name of the 6-style Superman, subscribe to the second update. 6 King Spear. Cyborg Senju Hashirama heard what Uchiha Madara said, and immediately thought of the scene where he almost survived. Carl's 6 King Spear almost blows his head off. If he hadn't hidden a truth-seeking ball, he would be dead by now. That's right, the 6 King Spear. This is the 6 formulas, but it is not any of the formulas we know. In addition to the 6 styles, there are still some extended skills that we didn't know about before, or we didn't deliberately pay attention to, similar to the 6 King Spear. Uchiha Madara stares at Carl intently. Am I right, Carl? His tone was extremely firm. Fangfo was not asking, but stating a fact. I have given you such obvious hints, if you can't even guess it, then you can only say that you are really stupid. Carl chuckled and shook his head. That's right, besides the 6 forms, there are actually some extension techniques. The functions of these techniques are different, but without exception, they are all widely used. For example, the type of 6 King Spear that the old man used just now is an attacking technique, but to lock youth, retain appearance, and reduce the aging speed of the body to ultimate, that is the return of life that is biased towards assisting and controlling. As soon as he said this, both Uchiha Madara and the android Senju Hashirama stopped. Return of life. Impossible. How can a mere return of life have the ability to reverse life and death, aging? Physical arts. Can it actually achieve this level of strength? Uchiha Madara, Cyborg Senju Hashirama's eyes widen in disbelief. They have known this technique for a long time. After all, in the Sengoku era, Carl used this technique to control the hair to initiate civil war. Especially Uchiha Madara, he can be said to have a fresh memory of the life return technique. The battle where his father Uchiha Tajima led a group of Uchiha people to kill Carl was the first time when life return shined in the Sengoku era. Facing the siege of many Uchihas, Carl was outnumbered, directly controlled the hair, conjured up dozens of arms, performed finger pistol and tempest kick, and killed all Uchihas in an instant. But no matter whether it is Uchiha Madara or the artificial man Senju Hashirama, none of them expected that the life return technique can have such incredible magical effects besides unscrupulously controlling various parts of the body, various organs and tissues in the body. It's been said that life is returned, isn't it natural to have such abilities? Those of you who practice chakra like to pursue those powerful techniques, blood succession and so on, but you don't know that even the most basic and ordinary abilities, as long as you practice to ultimate, you still have the ability to turn decay into magic, even if you too no exception. Take my 6 forms as an example, do you think they are really strong? That's because I'm strong, which makes Ryushi the Superman in the ninja circle, it's also me who is strong, which makes Hoki's name invincible. Quote. Carl glanced at the two of them. Quote. Uchiha Madara and the cyborg Senju Hashirama fell silent after hearing the words. Indeed, in the ninja world, because of wars and killings, ninjas have always been pursuing more powerful techniques, and they are only willing to delve into techniques that are already powerful. Even Uzumaki Naruto in the future. Whether it is Shadow Clone or Rasengan, they may seem inconspicuous, but these two techniques have high intentions, either forbidden technique or A-level ninjutsu. This is also the case, artificial human Senju Hashirama, Uchiha Madara, they are not willing, and they will not believe in the return of life, such an inconspicuous physique, which can be cultivated to an unfathomable level, and it can lock youth and keep immortality looks, to do things that ninjutsu and genjutsu can't do. Then you are uncharacteristically showing a true attitude that you didn't show when you were fighting me before. Does that mean that you plan to kill me this time? Carl said lightly. However, after Carl retired, physical skills were not valued, and the contempt still did not change much. Quote. So, before you fought with me, you didn't take it seriously at all, let alone kill it. Play. Hee. So I'm just a man of this level. Unless genin is poor, there are not many ninjas with high achievements, such as elite jonin, cage-level powerhouses will spend their whole lives studying and practicing those C-level and D-level ninjutsu. The same goes for Madara and Senju Hashirama. You call the fight with us a romp. Who would lay a dead hand while playing with friends? Carl asked nonchalantly. Uchiha Madara took a deep breath, and after calming down the shock brought by the return of life, she seemed to be laughing at herself, but also smiled Nuo Jiao. In fact, it was after Carl was born in the Sengoku era that the ninja realized that the original body art can also be powerful enough to overwhelm the god of ninja and Shura of the ninja world. If not, this is still the case with ninjutsu, let alone taijutsu, which has never been valued, or even underestimated. Not to mention Uchiha Madara, even Senju Hashirama, an artificial human who lost all memories and emotions about Carl, felt extremely upset and aggrieved when he heard Carl's words at this moment. Uchiha Madara took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in her heart. Chapter 281 I forgot to tell you. There are 3 kinds of Haki, Part 3 please subscribe. Not to you, but to you. As soon as Carl's words fell, the overwhelming terrifying aura, as if the doomsday was coming, a typhoon like a natural disaster swept away from him mightily. Showing a true posture, no longer wanting to kill as before, just the momentum makes Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama, who have mastered the power of 6 paths, feel shortness of breath. Bang! Before the two of them could make a move, there was an earth-shattering sound of thunder that shook the area tens of kilometers around. When they raised their heads and glanced at the sky, they realized, the sky of the Kingdom of Fire, which was originally clear at some point in time, had disappeared, replaced by one that was so thick that it made people feel extremely oppressed when they looked at it from the left, and even suffocating snow clouds. One after another is completely different from the blue and white thunder and lightning in the natural world, presenting a deep and dark, thunderous light like a black dragon flying down from the thunderclouds, filling the entire sea of trees. As this momentum, Uchiha Madara stared blankly at the changing situation. He can also change the celestial phenomena. 630. As long as the full body Susanoo is turned on, the celestial phenomena will be affected by a single blow. But Carl didn't release any substantial power now, just an oppressive momentum. Even Mr. Sixian can't do this. The artificial man Senju Hashirama looked at the sky. At this moment, his heart was occupied by boundless black clouds just like the sky of the land of fire. This is definitely not caused by momentum. No matter how powerful that illusory thing is, it is impossible for it to have such a huge impact on the material world. Quote. Uchiha Madara took a deep breath, suppressed the emotion on his face, and Sengoku Rinnegan burst out with powerful pupil power. You're right, it's not momentum, it's the third Haki I have mastered. As soon as Carl said this, with his body as the center, the Overlord BFFH, colored Haki spread out in all directions like a spreading black hole, covering the sky and swallowing everything. In an instant, the area within a radius of 1 kilometer was completely covered by the Black Conqueror's Haki visible to the naked eye. Humph. The first time I encountered the shock of Conqueror's Haki, it was stronger than Uchiha Madara, and the artificial man Senju Hashirama felt as if his brain was hit hard with a heavy hammer, and his heart was hit straight by Rasengan. A burst of intense dizziness flooded his forehead, and at the same time, his spirit seemed to be oppressed by a suddenly descending mountain. The third kind of Haki. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's expression is getting uglier. Ever since he saw Carl showing his youthful face, a strong uneasiness had sprouted in his heart. Sure enough, the subsequent aura that affected the sky and the third brand new Haki, which had never been seen before, turned his anxiety into panic. Decades of preparation, not to mention killing Carl, even they may not be able to leave this time. Aren't there only 2 kinds of Haki? Uchiha Madara's face was slightly pale. The first time he encountered the shock of Conqueror's Haki, he didn't have any mental preparations, nor any defenses, and even he didn't know how to defend himself. At least so far, apart from affecting the celestial phenomena and oppressing our spirit and body, I don't see anything worth being afraid of with your Haki. It just made the illusory aura substantive. For the first time, it caused us a lot of oppression and made us lose our composure, but that's all. Carl said he was sorry, but the calm and insincere tone made Uchiha Madara gnash his teeth in anger. However, why do I feel that you cast this third Haki not because we are weak, but because this third Haki is a bit tasteless compared to armed color and knowledge color. When did he get Uchiha Madara down to the point where Carl can attack him without a shot? It can be used in the battle between you and us, but it has no effect. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. There are actually 3 types of Haki. Cyborg Senju Hashirama said in a deep voice. No taste, no real damage at all. Senju Hashirama glanced at the sky, and the ground shaken by the Conqueror's chamber. In the next battle, even if you can continue to use this kind of Haki, at most it will only cause some oppression to our spirit and body, but there will be no substantial damage at all. Quote. Is not it? Although he was not injured, seeing Carl standing still, spreading Conqueror's Haki out of his face as if releasing his momentum, still made him feel extremely embarrassed and angry. Facing the evaluation of Conqueror's Haki by the android Senju Hashirama, Carl smiled. Facing you who are so weak, I really want to come up with a third kind of Haki, but I have no chance. You can't blame me although, you guys have been so weak all along, to the point where I only need 2 Hakis to defeat you. Really, I'm really sorry that we are so weak. Mr. Carl, with all due respect, your Haki is a very good ability to clean up some insignificant ninjas. Chapter 282 This is Conqueror's Winding Part 4 Please subscribe. Indeed, if this is what you call the third kind of Haki, then all I can say is to you, but that's all. Uchiha Madara heard the analysis of the artificial man Senju Hashirama, only to find that Carl's Conqueror's Haki has a great momentum. If you move, you will rewrite the sky and shake the surface of the earth. But in fact, even the sea of trees they created just now couldn't be destroyed. Except for the oppression of the spirit and body, it is meaningless to their existence at this level. But is that so? Then invite the 2 of you to taste this Haki, which has no real harm in your mouth, and is just so tasteless. Carl saw that the 2 of them didn't take Conqueror's Haki seriously, and the smile on his face grew stronger. In a way, Uchiha Madara and the others are right. If it's just the Conqueror's deterrence, even if he is as powerful as him, he can't cause any substantial damage to the strong at the same level. It's just a pretend skill to clean up miscellaneous fish on a large scale, set off the atmosphere, and create a scene. But the question is the Conqueror's Haki only used for shocking? To determine the power of Haki, in addition to the amount and strength of Haki itself, the skill of using it is also crucial. You don't need to tell me, we will too. I hope you won't be overwhelmed and change back to the armed color halfway through. Uchiha Madara and the cyborg Senju Hashirama looked at each other and each made a seal. The trees cut off by Carl with the Tempest kick kept growing back, and there were more of them, and they grew stronger and stronger. Sage Art Wood Style Flower and Tree World is coming. Not only that, but this time the two of them went one step further on the basis of the coming of the Tree World. A huge number of flowers appeared in the sea of trees all over the sky, but these flowers looked beautiful, but in fact they had hidden murderous intentions. The mist spread out. Even if the mature body of Susanoo was activated, he could only resent it. Shish. Under the control of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, the boundless mist swept in front of Carl in an instant like a storm. At the same time, there were tree roots covering the sky, like a group of pythons coming out of their holes, forming a terrifying scene. The human tree net submerged Carl in an instant. Facing the super wide area poisonous pollen fog and the terrifying tree net that engulfs everything, no matter how fast the speed is, no matter how powerful the physical skills are, it becomes meaningless to let Buddha go. Other than being beaten, you can only be beaten. The third kind of Haki. Is it really as simple as we think? While performing wood style, Uchiha Madara perceives Carl's every move. Don't look at what he said just now, but he doesn't despise the third type of Haki in his heart. Haki's ability. As early as the Sengoku era, countless powerful ninjas have proved the power of Haki with their own lives. What's more, they all recognized Carl's words. Because this man is strong, all abilities, even ordinary physical skills, will have inconceivable power in the hands of this man. That's the case with taijutsu, let alone Haki, who has always been terrifying. Different from armament Haki, which is more offensive and defensive, and acts on the body and the outside world, this third type of Haki is obviously inclined to oppress the spirit. If this kind of Haki is not as simple as I think, it must be acting on the spirit. In this way, Madara's Rinnegan is the best way to counter this mentally attacking Haki. Quote. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's idea coincides with Uchiha Madara's. No matter how contemptuous he is on the lips, he attaches great importance to it in his heart, and he is even guessing the purpose of Conqueror's Haki. *0. They don't quite believe that Conqueror's is tasteless. Even if it is tasteless, they also believe that Carl will turn a kind of tasteless Haki into a magical power. Use the pupil power of the three-god Jade Rinnegan to fight Conquerors. After fully sensing the thoughts of the artificial man Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, the corners of Carl's mouth slightly raised, and his right hand clenched into a fist leisurely. Chi. At the moment when the 5 fingers clenched tightly, streaks of black and red lightning-like matter suddenly wrapped around the fist. As the armed color entangled, the cyborg Senju Hashirama saw this scene and subconsciously thought that Carl was entwined with armed color. After all, Conqueror's wraps are quite similar to top-of-the-line armored wraps. Especially when Carl does not deliberately hide the armament Haki that is released outside, it will also trigger strips of black streamer-like substances when it is entwined. No, this is not the entanglement of armed color, but the third kind of Haki he mentioned. It's just that this kind of Haki is different from the color of knowledge and knowledge that is biased towards perception. Even if this kind of Haki is biased towards the spiritual aspect, it can be carried out in the same way as armed color, entangled. Hashirama, you can see clearly, when Carl casts armament Haki or is hardened, armament Haki is in the form of black streamer and gas flame, but now wrapped around his fist is a black-red lightning-like product. This is not armament Haki at all. Uchiha Madara, who has Rinnegan and Sage Mode perception, can see better than Senju Hashirama. The eyes are good. This is indeed not the entanglement of the armed color, let alone the hardening of the armed color, but the entanglement of the overlord color. After Carl finished speaking, he punched 7 with his fist forward. Chapter 283 One Punch. Sage Art Wood Style. It was not aimed at anyone, nor was it aimed in any direction. Facing the overwhelming pollen poisonous fog, and the thick cloud-like tree net covering the sky, Carl wrapped the Conqueror's Haki around his right fist, and just punched the air casually. But this seemingly inadvertent movement, at the moment when the fist was swung and paused in the air, all the poisonous pollen mist surging towards him froze around his body without exception. At the same time, what was frozen in front of him without any progress was the huge net made up of countless wooden dragon-like tree roots. Behind Carl's fist, all of them were frozen in front of him without exception. No longer, 900, couldn't get close to him by half a point. The poisonous pollen fog and the tree roots all over the sky seemed to have life, just like prey facing a high-level hunter. All of them were so frightened that they trembled in place, unable to move at all. What the hell does this happen? Why did it stop? Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara and the artificial man Senju Hashirama just had this idea in their minds, and their eyes were suddenly occupied by black and red lightning that spread in all directions. Bang! With a loud noise, centered on Carl's fist, many black and red lightning bolts swept towards the surroundings at the same time. Each black-red lightning-like substance carries a missile, which can release a terrifying explosion, causing a terrifying shock wave. Wherever the black-red lightning passes, the pollen poisonous mist that was stagnant in the air instantly disappears. Clouds scattered. The big net built by the tree roots that covered the sky and the sun exploded into countless sawdust in an instant. In just one face-to-face meeting, the poisonous haze of pollen and tree roots were all wiped out, leaving nothing behind. Instead, Carl, who was standing in the center of the sea of trees, was just keeping his punching movements. The king-like, invincible and unstoppable stalwart figure fell into their eyes. One punch. Has Sage Art Wood-style Flower Tree Realm come? As this the power of the third Haki wrapped around the fist. Both Uchiha Madara and the cyborg Senju Hashirama were dumbfounded. It's hard for them to understand. The Conqueror's Haki, which was spread before, is extremely tasteless and has no lethality. But with a different technique, from shocking to entanglement, the power changed drastically in an instant. A punch in the air, stagnating and destroying the flower and tree world descends. Conqueror's Haki. At this moment, the two remembered the name of the third type of Haki at the same time. Conqueror's Haki. This is not a tasteless Haki without substantial damage at all. On the contrary, the attack power is terrifying. Maybe it's not as good as Armament Haki, which has both offensive and defensive capabilities. It can be wound, hardened, released externally, internally attacked, and can be refined into a black knife. But once the Conqueror's Haki is entangled, the attack power will be higher than Armament Haki. Be careful, Hashirama. That kind of Conqueror's Haki is very weird. Once entangled, the attack power is not only higher than the armed color, but it is not as simple as a simple physical attack. But the kind of fist that is entwined with Conqueror's Haki, let alone being hit directly, even rubbing it is very dangerous. Once it is rubbed, not to mention the physical damage, the mental damage will be unbearable. This Conqueror's entanglement was simply too restraining for both of them. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's expression turned serious when he heard this. Double mental and physical attacks. LO2124151243822160. Fo Senju Hashirama is creepy. 1.6. Uchiha Madara sneered in an unprecedentedly serious tone. If the body can carry conquerors, the spirit may not be able to carry it. On the contrary, if the spirit can carry it, the body cannot. Quote. Just like the illusion technique, pupil technique, and forbidden technique that can cause substantial damage to the spirit. The Conqueror's Haki wrapped around his fist can cause a blow to the body and spirit simultaneously. After Uchiha Madara recovered from the shock caused by Conqueror's winding, the first words were to warn the android Senju Hashirama. As long as the attack of Armament Haki is not directly hit, we can bear it. After all, the armament effect is on the body, and the physical attack is the main one. You and I can't be hit. I can resist the attack of Conqueror's winding on the mind, but not the attack on the body. On the contrary, you can withstand the attack of Conqueror's winding on the body, but not attacks that act on the mind. Quote. Even if there was, facing the conquerors that Carl showed for the first time, they couldn't find it for a while, and they couldn't think of an effective countermeasure. If you really encounter the blow of Conqueror's Haki, you can only rely on your body and mind to bear it, unlike One Piece World, where you can use conquerors to fight against the Overlord. That is to say, Conqueror's entanglement, it's totally Tionk you and me. Because we all just each inherit the mental energy of the Sage of Six Paths, as well as the physical energy. After all, most people in the ninja world are far inferior to pirate world in terms of physical strength and spiritual will, and they don't have the effective ability to compete with conquerors. Although he has better perception ability than Uchiha Madara, but he doesn't have Sengoku Rinnegan, but he can't see as clearly as Uchiha Madara. Are Carl's suffocatingly powerful conquerors. Once it acts on the winding, the power that erupts is too terrifying. Chapter 284 Sage Art Multiple Wooden Golem Jutsu, Part 6 for subscription. Don't let Carl get close to us. Witnessing the power of the conqueror's entanglement, the cyborgs Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara reached a consensus almost instantly. Sage Art Wood Style Wood Clone. Susanoo. The two maintained a handshake posture, and the other hand formed a mudra with one hand. In an instant, 20 cyborg Senju Hashirama's wood-style clones detached from his body and appeared on the battlefield almost at the same time. Immediately afterwards, 20 wood-style clones all opened up the mature body Susanoo. Previously, Uchiha Madara, who had been transplanted with Senju Hashirama's flesh tissue, could also cast Susanoo with a wood-style clone. Among the many physical clones, only Wood Clone, which has a tree with strong vitality as a carrier, can cast Susanoo. Other physical clones, even Shadow Clone, cannot bear to activate Susanoo. But even so, limited by the power of chakra and pupils, Uchiha Madara was unable to allow more than 20 shadow clones to open the mature body of Susanoo in the past, and could only reach the second form of 15 states at most, and produce Susanoo in the blue chakra titan form, that's all. Unlike now, with the huge sage art chakra of Senju Hashirama making the wood-style avatar, coupled with the powerful pupil technique of Uchiha Madara Rinnegan, and the increase of pupil power in sage mode, there are two chakra connected together, regardless of even Tongli and chakra are completely different from the past. Wood Clone. Susanoo. The effect of this kind of thing is very limited. Facing the 20 mature Susanoos, they could only despair if they replaced cage-level powerhouses, or even ordinary super cage-level beings. But in Carl's eyes, there was not even a little fluctuation caused by Bibimbap. Whether it's Wood Clone or the mature Susanoo, it's just useless. Not always. The corners of Uchiha Madara's mouth slightly raised. This is Sage Art Susanoo. With a cold drink from him, the 20 Susanoos with mature bodies like a mountain of Buddha exuded a strong force of nature at the same time. With the increase of Shanshu chakra, the combat capability of each mature Susanoo becomes extremely large. The originally slow-moving speed has become faster, and the already powerful destructive power has been further strengthened. Similarly, the absolute defense that Susanoo is proud of has also been greatly multiplied. Sage Art Yasaka's Gokudama. Under the control of Uchiha Madara and the cyborg Senju Hashirama, 20 Sage Art Susanoo swarmed up, holding the Sage Art Yusaka's hook jade at Carl at the same time. Is this what you rely on? Facing more than 20 Sage Art Yusaka's hook jade, Carl didn't even lift his eyelids, but just opened his 5 fingers and popped forward like a dragon's claws. When the black and red lightning flashed out, all the Sage Art Yusaka no Guyu, which were bursting with bright blue light and contained powerful destructive power, without exception first froze in the void, and then shattered one after another. No, this is just our practice. The cyborg Senju Hashirama clapped his hands, and the powerful celestial chakra surged out, causing Carl to look sideways. Amassing such a large amount of fairy chakra in one breath. Do you want to cast true several thousand hands? Carl watched the android Senju Hashirama with interest. True several thousand hands represents the strongest wood style in the past, not the present. Mr. Carl, you don't think that after decades of preparation, I can only rely on the wood style inherited from the main body to fight against you, right? Sage Art wood style multiple wooden golem jutsu. In the Sengoku era, even just one wooden golem, and an ordinary wooden golem without the celestial chakra, was comparable to the complete Susanoo of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and now there are not only 5 such wooden golems, but each one is made of manufactured by Shanshu chakra, and each one is stronger than the wooden golem cast by Senju Hashirama in the Sengoku era. With such a wood style, even the resurrection of the main body Hashirama can only be amazing. Unlike the main body, the artificial human Senju Hashirama also has the Otsutsuki, the Sixian, to guide and help in practice. As soon as Senju Hashirama's voice fell, the earth began to shake. Uchiha Madara snorted coldly, although he was also shocked by Senju Hashirama's Sage Art wood style, and even a Sage Art of the size of wooden golem can produce 5 at a time. He is unwilling to be inferior to the other party, even if it is now a joint effort. He also does not want his limelight to be completely covered up. Cyborg Senju Hashirama slowly lowers his hand 170. The 6th update is completed. Please subscribe and support. I am very grateful. I am very grateful. In the blink of an eye, 5 burly wooden golems as huge as 5 mountains have fallen into Carl's sight. Huh, surprised. I haven't danced yet. Amazing wood style. It's not that the main body Senju Hashirama is weak, but that the artificial human Senju Hashirama not only has decades more practice time, but also has innate conditions that are much stronger than the main body Senju Hashirama who has been reincarnated countless times and has thin blood. Even if they haven't launched an attack yet, just the number and size of wooden golem are scary enough. Since the dead body has lost everything to you, and it's still the old you, that means the move of true several thousand hands won't work. At least I can't rely on this move to shake your iron fist. Quote. In the next second, one after another, huge wooden golems, comparable in size to a full-body Susanoo, and wooden dragons around their waists rose from the ground at the same time. Seeing this scene, Carl had to be amazed. With Chatinla and wood style, Sage mode is naturally better than the main body. Chapter 285 1 verses. 5 Wooden Golem Part 1 Please subscribe. Yes. Then let me see how you are different from the you were before. After Carl saw the artificial man Senju Hashirama making 5 Sage Art wooden golems with every gesture, he was also aroused to fight. Ever since he met the two of them, he, who had never taken the initiative to launch an offensive, was a little overjoyed at the sight of hunting, and disappeared in place with a sudden step. This way is dead. After seeing the power of Carl's conquerors winding, the android Senju Hashirama dare not let Carl get close. After all, both armament hockey and observation hockey have seen it many times, and they have enough experience and skills to deal with it. But conquerors hockey, the third type of hockey that Carl has never shown in front of the world, they dare not take risks when they face it for the first time and have no experience in dealing with it. Although after reaching their level of strength, there is basically no possibility of the first kill, but this non-existence is based on the fact that the opponents they face are only cage level and Chaoying. The opponent is Carl, who is already stronger than them. Once he displays an unprecedented ability, it is no longer impossible to kill at first sight. Bang 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 bang. Under the control of the artificial human Senju Hashirama, the 5 Sage Art wooden golems leap forward. Sage Art wooden golem, who was already huge in size, crossed the distance between Carl and Carl even with just one leap, surrounded Carl in an instant, and then 5 fists digging like hills descended from the sky, completely blocking all of Carl's dodging routes. The heavy wooden golem is surprisingly agile. Carl's eyes flashed red. Facing the fist of Sage Art wooden golem blocking all dodging routes at the same time, he simply didn't rush forward or dodge, but raised his foot and volleyed. Tempest kick. Accompanied by a sharp and ear-piercing roar, a huge slashing wave burst out of the air on the spot like a potential dragon coming out of an abyss, and slashed fiercely at the front one with the power of cutting heaven and earth on the fist of Sage Art wooden golem. Boom. Once the chopping wave collided with the fist of Sage Art wooden golem, the majestic air wave spread wave after wave, instantly rolling up the ground tens of meters deep, together with many towering giant trees, throwing fly into the air. It's not over yet. At this time, the second Sage Art wooden golem also arrived. The artificial man Senju Hashirama obviously knew how terrifying Carl's non-human physical skills were, so he didn't give Carl a chance to move, dodge, or show that amazing speed. The second Sage Art wooden golem rushed over aggressively and raised his palm, just like the palm of Buddha. He could grasp the sun and the moon with his gestures, carrying a terrifying momentum, and grabbed Carl condescendingly. With wooden golem's not slow speed, coupled with the area covered by Sage Art wooden golem's palm, paper arts, one of the 6 forms of dodging, has little use for it. Even if Carl Paper Arts is really beyond the expectations of the android Senju Hashirama, in this case, it can also use Paper Arts to avoid the palm of Sage Art Wooden Golem, but there are 3 Sage Art Wooden Golems watching. Even, he wasn't afraid that Carl would predict that with Wooden Golem's size, movements, and actions, it would be difficult to hide it. He just wanted to fight Carl directly with absolute tyrannical strength. In the next second, the thick and boundless black clouds covering the sky split apart with a puff. He was in midair, with nowhere to borrow his strength. How could he still unleash such astonishing power? In this regard, he was not surprised but smiled. What the hell kind of physical strength is this? Just carry it. The sky of the Land of Fire was directly torn apart by a fist between Carl and the Sage Art artist. With a large-scale attack, are there still people who can block my fine drawing? Thinking of this, he stepped on the void, and at a height of more than 100 meters, he faced the probing hand of the second Sage Art Wooden Golem. The androids Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara both punched each other with their eyelids twitching. Faced with Senju Hashirama's shock and loss of voice, Carl let out a long roar, and his laughter, like a thunderclap, turned into overwhelming sound waves, shaking the sky. 1,000-meter-long, bottomless, daunting crack in the sky appeared out of thin air. After all, this is the first time he has really played against Carl since he was created. It is obvious that the size ratio is completely out of proportion, and it can even be said that the body shape and fists are very different, but Carl made a blow to the wooden golem, who was hundreds of meters tall and down to earth in the midair with nowhere to rely. After the fist, he was not blown away by the palm of Sage Art Wooden Golem, or smashed into a pulp. Carl has a clear perception of the movement of the entire battlefield. On the contrary, after touching the palm of Sage Art Wooden Golem, with a loud noise, the atmosphere suddenly became thicker than the lake water, and then the airflow within a radius of 1 kilometer was forcibly stopped, presenting a strange screen. Since the android Senju Hashirama doesn't want him to dodge, then he shouldn't dodge. Nuo how have you survived the attacks of the 2 adults? How much does your clone Hashirama look down on me? Uchiha Madara has seen this kind of picture too much, and although Senju Hashirama also has such a picture in his memory, it is the first time to experience it personally. Chapter 286 Don't continue to dance. Second update asks for subscription. Could it be that he? After hearing Carl's laughter, the artificial man Senju Hashirama couldn't help but feel tense, and then he was dumbfounded by the next scene. Sage Art Wooden Golem is also worthy of my equal share. I saw Carl sneer, the muscles of his right arm swelled suddenly, and the clearly visible blood vessels seemed to be like tiny dragons swimming in the muscles, releasing huge power continuously. Boom. 1 second before, Sage Art Wooden Golem looked like he was evenly matched with Carl, but the next second, there was an object explosion sound from Sage Art Huen's thick wooden arm. Shocking cracks started from Sage Art Wood's palm and extended all the way to the arm. Click. When the entire arm is covered with appalling cracks, Sage Art Wooden Golem's huge, heavy, even Nine-Tails tailed beast bomb can be slapped down, and even the shattered palm and arm explode into countless sawdust almost indistinguishable to the naked eye. Bang bang bang. Not only that, after Sage Art Wooden Golem's arm was smashed by Carl's punch, his huge body seemed to lose his balance, like an ordinary person suddenly slipping, his body uncontrollably retreated nearly 1,000 meters backwards, then he sat down on the ground. Monster. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's face sank, and he quickly suppressed the horror in his heart. The 2 Sage Art Wooden Golems who had already been ready to go punched at the same time, one left and one right at Carl at the same time. Boom. After the 2 punches were implemented, Carl was instantly overwhelmed by the 2 mountain-like fists like a fly being swatted by 2 palms. As the fists of the 2 Sage Art Wooden Golems collided, the turbulent waves of the raging sea surged and swept across the sky. Did you make it? Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara immediately radiated powerful perception. Although Carl did not practice chakra, the powerful physical and mental energy of the other party was like a nuclear bomb detonated in the dark, releasing a strong light that was dazzling enough to blind people's eyes. No, his breath has not weakened. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's pupils shrank. Creak. Almost at the same time, Carl, who was hit by the fists of 2 Sage Art Wooden Golems, opened his hands violently, as if pushing a giant mountain away from the middle with his left and right hands. The fist of Sage Art Wooden Golem who hit directly was pushed away by his hands. After Carl forged his body into a black knife, the unbelievable strength was far beyond my expectation. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara couldn't help gasping. He could see it. Carl's body is so strong at this time, even if he doesn't use armament hockey for defense, he doesn't use defensive physical skills such as Iron Body, and if he doesn't defend himself, he will be attacked without any expectations, even if he is a full body of the first level of Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan Susanoo, even an ordinary Rinnegan level full body, Susanoo could not break Carl's body with a single blow with all his strength. BFED, at this moment, in Uchiha Madara's opinion, compared to Susanoo, Carl's black sword body is the real absolute defense. No need to control, no need to actively release, it is in the strongest defense state anytime and anywhere, and it is not a certain part of the body, but any part of the whole body, even if it is the lower genitals, temples and other fatal vital points of the human body, the defense power is so unimaginable. He has such physical strength, speed, reaction, physical fitness and so on, let's not talk about it, just the defense under normal conditions. He will basically not be killed by any ability at the first sight, and there will be no surprise attack. Quote. Cyborg Senju Hashirama watched Carl unleash monstrous divine power like a god, and forcibly pushed away the two sage art wooden golems, which were taller and heavier than the mountains, and couldn't help swallowing saliva frantically. Aren't you going to continue dancing? Carl held a sage art wooden golem in one hand, and after pushing them away, his face didn't turn red or livid at all, but he still had the energy to speak. It gives people a kind of indescribable ease and freehand brushwork. Putting the Buddha away to push away two sage art wooden golems that are heavier than mountains is far from reaching the limit of his strength. It is possible, but there is no need to continue. At least this sage art wood style multiple wooden golem jutsu alone cannot shake you, let alone defeat you. Cyborg Senju Hashirama took a look at the last sage art wooden golem. While Carl was crushed by the fists of two wooden golems, or Carl fought against two sage art wooden golems 1 against 2, he was fully able to use the fifth and last sage art wooden golem attacks. But he didn't do that. Then are you planning to give up? Carl looked at the android Senju Hashirama with a big smile. How is it possible? What I said is that there is no need to continue. It just means that there is no need to continue using this technique to deal with you, not that the battle is over. Mr. Carl, it's too early for you to be happy. Although sage art wood style multiple wooden golem jutsu cannot cause any damage to you, this technique is not meaningless. At least I have achieved my goal, that is to test the depth of your black sword body. The cyborg Senju Hashirama took a deep breath, calmed down, and showed a strong fighting spirit on his face again. Chapter 287 Sage Art Prestige Multiple Wooden Golem Jutsu, Part 3 Request Subscription. My depth. Carl heard the words of the artificial man Senju Hashirama, as if he heard something that made people laugh, the smile on his face became more intense. Good. The Boyle style mode tests out your speed and reflexes. Multiple Wooden Golem Jutsu, put your strength, defense to the test. I have to say, Mr. Carl, after you turned your body into a black knife, it is really terrifying, but although it is scary, it is not to the point of complete despair. At least your defense. I still have confidence broken. Quote. Cyborg Senju Hashirama has a rare confidence on his face. From the beginning of the battle, his expression has always been as solemn and gloomy as dark clouds cover the sky. But now, he did not say that he showed the confidence of victory, but he saw the confidence, that is the confidence to fight Carl. Breaking my physical defenses. How dare you say that? Carl laughed. Then try it out. I also want to see how you broke my body. Quote. If it was before, the artificial man Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara could indeed do it together. Can you really think that he is standing still? Really think that all these years are in vain? Really think that he went to Mount Myoboku for nothing? You'll see right away. As soon as Uchiha Madara's unruly words fell, the two sage art wooden golem wrestling with Carl burst into blue light all over their bodies. Sage art Weizhuang multiple wooden golem jutsu. Not only these two sage art wooden golems, but the other three sage art wooden golems, including the sage art wooden golem whose arm was crushed by Carl and fell to the ground, also stood up and regrown its arms. At the same time, the whole body is wrapped in bright blue chakra. In the blink of an eye, the body surfaces of the 5 sage art wooden golems have been covered by pieces of indestructible and daunting complete body armor. The 5 sage art wooden golems are fused with the 5 complete Suzanos at the same time. Almost as soon as sage art wooden golem put on the armor transformed by Suzano, Carl felt the force from both hands rising at an astonishing speed. After putting on the complete Suzano armor, sage art wooden golem not only climbed to an astonishing level of defense, but also showed an explosive increase in speed and strength. The most important thing is that after the artificial human Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara's chakra are connected, the pull that belongs to the power of 6 paths is also shown in the trap of sage art Weizhuang multiple wooden golem in front of you. 6 paths yin-yang power. Carl felt the chakra breath emanating from the 2 prestige costumes sage art wooden golem close at hand, and his eyes showed a rare fighting spirit. Whether it's Uchiha Madara or Senju Hashirama, the artificial man, if they are separated, it's just mediocre in his eyes. Even 2 Uchiha Madara, or 2 cyborg Senju Hashirama, are just as bad in his eyes. But when Uchiha Madara and the cyborg Senju Hashirama are combined, the chakra of the two are connected to each other, and the fusion is as if some kind of chemical change has taken place. It becomes extremely heavenly. That is the original power of chakra in the ninja world. A single artificial human Senju Hashirama, or a single Uchiha Madara does not have the power of 6 paths, neither yin nor yang. But after the two united, chakra has the power of 6 paths yin and yang. And the sage art Weizhuang multiple wooden golem jutsu in front of you is the product of 6 paths, yin and yang power. It is different from Naruto and Sasuke whose blood is thin in the future and can only rely on the gift of sage of 6 paths to improve his strength. The cyborgs in front of them, Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, each possess the complete power of Indra and Ashura. Wood style, Sharingan, Sage Art, Rinnegan are all available. Ask for flowers. Unlike Naruto in the future, although it has a sage body, it does not have the wood style that matches the sage body, as well as the complete power of Ashura. Finally, something interesting. Sensing the changes in the 2 prestige outfits Sage Art Wooden Golem, Carl showed a trace of seriousness. But just when he was about to push away the 2 majestic outfits, Sage Art Wooden Golem, which was competing with him, the 2 fists covered with the azure blue chakra armor suddenly let go. But the fist was gone, and what he got in exchange was the mighty wood-style long sword, which could destroy everything in the ninja world. Boom. After the 2 swords were executed, Carl turned into a shooting star shining in the sky in an instant, flew several kilometers away, and landed on a high mountain in the distance. Bang. With a loud noise, the mountain peak that was originally more than 200 meters high instantly collapsed and disintegrated, and the falling Karl smashed it into a large sunken meteorite crater. Before Karl got up from the deep pit, two majestic outfits Sage Art Wooden Golem had already chased after him, slashing with their knives at a distance of more than 1,000 meters. The two chakra slashes tore open the surface of the land of fire in an instant, cutting out two bottomless cracks and swirling in front of Karl in the deep pit. Boom! Karl, who hadn't gotten up, was not only submerged by the two chakra slashes, but his body was also thrown into the air at a height of more than 500 meters. The meteorite crater he was lying on just now disappeared, replaced by two craters. A strange mountain composed of many fragments of the earth rising from the ground. The previous two sabers, just the aftermath, destroyed a big mountain, turning the mountain into a big pit. Immediately afterwards, the two knives across the 1,000-meter land shattered the ground again, and countless fragments rose from the ground and gathered into mountains. In front of Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama, the surface and terrain of the ninja world have become like random patchwork and dismantling. Chapter 288. Have you broken the defense? The fourth update asks for subscription. It's not over yet. He suffered heavy blows one after another, and finally was thrown into the air like a rag. However, the offensive of Uchiha Madara and the artificial man Senju Hashirama showed no intention of stopping. Whether it's Uchiha Madara, or Senju Hashirama, a cyborg who has already known Karl's strength after two trials, they all know that despite Karl's messy look, the body of the black sword has not broken the defense in the slightest. It's their attacks that are completely white hits. The most important thing is that they all know how terrifying Karl's physical skills are. With a height of more than 2 meters, it is not even 1% of the Sage Art Weizhuang multiple wooden golem jutsu, but it has the speed and dodge far surpassing Weizhuang Xion's 927 method wooden golem. As for strength and defense, you have to compare them head-on to know. Facing such a 2-meter-tall ninja hero who looks like an enhanced version of Wooden Golem, a condensed ninja hero, they did not dare to lower their offensive in the slightest. Once Karl is relieved, or pulled out, then things will be troublesome. Taking advantage of Karl being slashed by two swords and flying into the sky, and his whole body was covered by Chakra's slash, making him unable to move, Wooden Golem, the last prestige immortal, also arrived at this time. Although Susanoo is worn on Sage Art Wooden Golem, even with Chakra's wings, she can't fly. After all, the weight of Sage Art Wooden Golem is too scary. It is made of wood, unlike Susanoo, which is composed of chakra and pupil power. To fly such a heavy wooden golem, even if Uchiha Madara's pupil power is doubled, it would be impossible. But even if it can't fly, after spreading the chakra wings, the abilities of Weizhuang Sage Art Wooden Golem's movement speed, balance force, explosive force and so on will rise in a straight line. With a distance of several kilometers, with his exaggerated and frightening pace, coupled with the flapping of his wings, and his brief mid-air transformation, when Karl was knocked into the air, he rushed over and pulled out the Susanoo injection. The wood-style long knife of the weapon stabbed Karl straight from the bottom up, as if making a skewer. Boom. The moment when the chakra wood-style long knife stabbed Karl, it was obvious that he stabbed a person more than 2 meters tall, but it seemed as if he had stabbed on a thick island, and a large piece of sparks swayed in the sky. And blow away the dark clouds that cover the sky and the sun, and blow high waves into the sky. Boom. A second ago, the sky was still covered with dark clouds, covered by thick black clouds, but after a haircut, Karl, who was stabbed in the front by the chakra wood-style long knife, appeared on the sky behind him. It looks like a tornado, but also has an atmospheric hole like a vortex. Not only that, the ground stepped on by the 5 prestige Sage Art Wooden Golems is now in a state of disrepair, as if it has been intensively scrubbed by many missiles, blasting the ground layer after layer. In the land with a radius of more than 10 kilometers, nothing is complete. Whether it's the land, the mountains, or the rivers, they were all completely destroyed, and they were covered in terrifying flames like a prairie fire. With such a large-scale destruction, although the androids Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara have concentrated chakra as much as possible and poured all their power on Karl, the aftermath of chakra still caused amazing damage to the environment of the Fire Nation. Fortunately, although this area is in the land of fire, it is also close to the junction of the country's border and the ocean. The three of them hit each other, consciously or unconsciously, they kept shifting in the direction of the sea. As the defense broken, not to mention the three of them now, any one of them would surpass the category of ninja gods in the Sengoku era. It was a wonderful game, but, can it only go to this level? If they didn't move towards the sea, but fought all the way inland, even if the battle lasted only for a few hours, the Kingdom of Fire, and even more countries would cease to exist. Finger pistol. Fighting till now, their tacit understanding and chakra's connection and cooperation are getting better and better. I don't know if it broke or not, but his aura doesn't seem to have weakened much. But thanks to your attacks, I also have a comprehensive understanding of my body. Uchiha Madara and the cyborg Senju Hashirama landed on top of a prestige Sage Art Wooden Golem. It would be a pity if 5.9 is your limit. Susanoo, wood style itself is a technique with the power to shatter everything. The existence of a level of ninja gods in the Sengoku era already has the power to rewrite the terrain of the ninja world. After Karl paused his words, he stretched out his right hand and pressed it on the chakra wood style long knife. You are still far from the point where I can break the defense. Looking at his condescending posture, it doesn't seem like he has suffered successive attacks just now, but the one who has always had the upper hand. At this time, they have managed to connect each other's chakra without holding hands, forming the power of 6 paths. The 5 fingers, compared to the weapon of Wei Zhuang's sage art wooden golem, are simply negligible, but these 5 fingers. With a bang, the majestic finger force surged like a tide after it came out, the weapon that looked like a pillar of heaven was pierced and shattered by finger force. In midair, Karl, who was pierced by the tip of the chakra wood-style long knife, slowly raised his head and looked down at Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama below. Chapter 289 Hashirama, Bad News and Worse News, which one do you want to hear? The 5th update asks for subscription. Still not working. In which part did the problem occur? The attack just now should be enough to break the defense. The android Senju Hashirama's expression froze, and his brows were tightly knit together. The last time he fought Karl, although it was a hasty farewell, he only played true several thousand hands, but he also had a certain understanding of Karl's black sword body, plus the 2 temptations he had just risked his life to carry out. Among other things, he thought he already knew enough about the defense of the body of the black knife. With so many attacks just now, not to mention serious injuries, at least they should be able to break through the defense, no matter how bad it is, Karl can feel the pain. It turns out, that's how it is. Uchiha Madara's eyes widened in vain, and the magic chakra poured into them continuously. Originally the whole body was purple, and the 3-hooked jade Rinnegan, with 3 hooked jades emerging, began to undergo an amazing transformation after a large amount of celestial chakra and the power of Ashura of the artificial man Senju Hashirama were injected into it. The number of gobs began to increase, from the original master gob Rinnegan to 4 gob Rinnegan. Not only that, the originally purple eyes also turned golden. The change in the eyes allowed Uchiha Madara to see many things that she couldn't see when her eyes were still Rinnegan. What's wrong? Cyborg Senju Hashirama noticed the change in Uchiha Madara's eyes and was surprised, but he was more concerned about what the other party saw. There is a problem with his black knife body. Uchiha Madara reached out and touched his eyes. What's the problem? Cyborg Senju Hashirama's heart tightened. Sure enough, his judgment was not wrong, but that there were some secrets in the body of the black knife that he didn't know. After all, armament Haki never appeared before Karl was born. Karl had never done anything as crazy as turning his body into a black knife. Therefore, they all know the body of the black knife, just like they are unfamiliar with Conqueror's Haki. Natural energy. Karl's black sword body has the power of nature in addition to armament Haki. Uchiha Madara spoke surprisingly. Did you find it? Karl noticed that Uchiha Madara's eyes had evolved again, although this time the evolution was short-lived rather than permanent, and could only appear when connected with the artificial human Senju Hashirama's chakra, but he still had a slight look at the eyes curious. How strong is a pair of 4-hook jade Rinnegan pupils? Compared with receiving the power gift of Sage of 6 Paths, which is stronger or weaker than Uchiha Sasuke's only 1 Rinnegan. A force of nature. Mr. Karl doesn't know how to chakra. How could he have the power of nature? When the android Senju Hashirama heard this, he looked at Uchiha Madara in surprise, and then at Karl. He doesn't have chakra, nor does he practice chakra, but that doesn't mean he can't master the power of nature. Such things as the power of nature existed before chakra existed in the ninja world. In other words, the force of nature is not a product of the chakra system, and Sage Mode is just a combination of force of nature and chakra, not the only use of force of nature. In other words, to master the power of nature, you don't have to rely on chakra, you have to rely on Sage Mode. At least for now, Karl's black sword body is not only made with armament Haki and forces of nature. And it's not an ordinary force of nature, it's a massive force of nature. When Uchiha Madara said this, he didn't know what he thought of, and drops of sweat suddenly appeared on that unruly and handsome face. A force of nature. No wonder his black knife body, we can't break it anymore. It turns out that there is a reason for the force of nature. Cyborg Senju Hashirama suddenly realized. As the ninja who can play Sage Mode best in the ninja world, he naturally knows the horror of the power of nature. Combined with chakra to form immortal chakra, physical, illusion, ninjutsu, and pupil techniques will all show geometric improvements. It's nothing, I just have 2 messages to tell you, I don't know which one do you want to hear. At this time, the cyborg Senju Hashirama also reacted. Karl didn't speak either, but enjoyed Uchiha Madara's wonderful expression changes with a playful face. Cyborg Senju Hashirama felt uneasy when he saw Uchiha Madara's expression. I may not have said it clearly enough. Which do you want to hear? Let's listen to the good first. If you listen to the bad first, then the good will become bad. In fact, there is no good news, only bad news, and worse news. After the natural force merged with Hidao's body became even more terrifying, which is naturally normal. Then let's hear the worse news first. Maybe, after hearing the worse news, and then the less bad news, it will become good news. He knew that for Uchiha Madara's character to say such words, it must be the pair of 4-hook jade Rinnegan saw something. After hearing Senju Hashirama's words, Uchiha Madara didn't speak, but his face was shrouded in haze. What's wrong with you, Madara? Uchiha Madara's tone was a bit bitter. When Uchiha Madara said this, the android Senju Hashirama didn't know whether to cry, get angry, or laugh. Cyborg Senju Hashirama said without thinking. What's more, the things he saw, or phenomena, made him feel overwhelming mental pressure. Seeing that Uchiha Madara didn't say a word, he turned his head and saw that Uchiha Madara's face was frighteningly dark. Chapter 290 Immortal Art Armed Color, subscribe to Chapter 6. Senjutsu Chakra. You know it. Uchiha Madara saw that the artificial man Senju Hashirama wanted to hear worse news as soon as he opened his mouth, instead of listening to one bad news to exercise his mental endurance, so he spoke in a relatively calm tone as much as possible. I know. Isn't Shanshu chakra the product of the fusion of chakra and natural energy? What do you say this for? Cyborg Senju Hashirama looked at Uchiha Madara suspiciously. He is currently the best player in Sage mode in the ninja world. How could it be possible to not even know what chakra is? Chakra compatible with natural energy is Senju chakra, that Haki compatible with natural energy, what is it? As soon as Uchiha Madara said this, the face of the android Senju Hashirama changed drastically. Natural energy is compatible with Haki, is this the worst news you're talking about? Cyborg Senju Hashirama exclaimed aloud. The body of the black knife is refined by armament Haki, but I can see the breath of natural force in Karl's body. You also know how tyrannical the forces of nature can be. Even if there are cultivation methods from the three holy places, and chakra is compatible with the forces of nature, what will happen if you can't control it? You know better than me. The why. Uchiha Madara fixed her eyes on Karl. But now Karl's black sword body has clearly absorbed a large amount of natural force, but there has been no conflict, backlash, etc. In other words, armament Haki is very likely to be like chakra, merging with the power of nature, it becomes a more powerful unknown Haki. Let me call it the color of the fairy weapon. Quote exclamation mark quote. In the end, the solemnity in his words was so thick that it was almost substantive. Shanju armed color. This is even worse news, what about the bad news? Cyborg Senju Hashirama just felt a bitter taste in his mouth. Haki after merging with the power of nature. That is, the color of the fairy weapon. I don't know what ability it has, but one thing I can know is the body of Karl's black sword. The five forces of nature. 17. Uchiha Madara paused every word. How Tionk. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's heart sank. Sure enough, even with worse news as a base, he still felt a lot of pressure when he heard the bad news. It's like Rinnegan's restrained relationship with ninjutsu. His black sword body can absorb the forces of nature. Just like my Rinnegan can absorb ninjutsu. Quote. Uchiha Madara said with a little difficulty. Able to absorb the power of nature. No wonder, our attack just now was theoretically enough to break through Mr. Karl's physical defense, but in the end it didn't even scratch the skin. It turns out that his black sword body can absorb natural energy, which also caused when our technique hit him, the natural force in the attack was absorbed by his black sword body. Quote. Cyborg Senju Hashirama turned pale. Since he was shocked, he suddenly realized. It turned out that the reason why Karl's black knife body could not be broken just now was due to the force of nature. Originally, after the power of nature was amplified, the power of their spells was several times lower than normal, but the power of nature was absorbed, and the power of their spells naturally dropped to normal. In this way, it is naturally impossible to break the defense. If that's all it is, it's not bad news. At most, the situation is a bit unfavorable. Uchiha Madara shook her head. What else? The artificial man Senju Hashirama swallowed. Unconsciously, most of the confidence on his face had disappeared. Although his chakra is not as huge as the artificial human Senju Hashirama, but after mastering Sage mode and experiencing the power of Sage art, he doesn't want to give up this power. The same goes for Uchiha Madara on the side. In other words, if we continue to use Sage art to attack Karl, it will only make him stronger and stronger. In the end, the body of the black sword will be upgraded to an unimaginable level. Quote. Good. Without Sage art, he can only use chakra and Tongli to fight, and he also becomes restrained. After all, without Sage mode's boost to the 4-Goat Jade Rinnegan, his eyes will degenerate into 3-Goose Jade Rinnegan, and the power of the pupil technique will be greatly reduced. Susano, wear it on top of the 5 wooden golems. The android Senju Hashirama stared fixedly at Karl, and the celestial makeup on his face gradually dissipated. His powerful pupil power and chakra are brought by Sage mode. After realizing that Karl's black knife body can not only absorb the power of nature, but also use their power of nature to strengthen the body, both of them had to quit Sage mode, and never dared to use Sage art again. The 6th update is completed. Please subscribe and support. I am very grateful. I am very grateful. His black sword body can not only absorb the natural power of the art, but after absorbing it, it can be used to strengthen his black sword body. But now, Sage mode has become Karl's power bank. In other words, his strength has at least been cut a lot. This kind of thing can happen. Besides wood style, what he is best at is Sage mode. Quote. Our Sage art has become his tonic. After Uchiha Madara finished speaking, the cyborg Senju Hashirama felt his hands and feet go cold. Cyborg Senju Hashirama fell silent, the confidence completely gone from his face. Uchiha Madara looked gloomy and extremely happy. Chapter 291 Madara, your attack seems to work. Part 1. Please subscribe. Without Sage mode, we can't use Sage art. Can our strength still pose a threat to him? After exiting Sage mode, whether it is Uchiha Madara or Senju Hashirama, their expressions are very ugly. Obviously Karl didn't do anything and didn't take the initiative to attack. On the contrary, after the battle started, the two of them used Sage art ninjutsu and Sage art pupil technique one after another, and they all fell on Karl's body. But now, as the main attacking side, they seem to be reduced to the beaten side. Why this expression? It was me who was beaten just now, not you. Isn't it just that Sage art can't be used? As for this, After taking a panoramic view of the changes in the expressions of Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama, Carl showed a playful smile. HMPH, you'd better not get too complacent. I'm not the same idiot as Hashirama. I haven't had any sage art since I walked 300 like this. Without sage art, I'm still that Uchiha Madara. Facing Carl's ridicule, Uchiha Madara gave a cold drink, and directly opened the 1000-meter high complete body Susanoo. Although there is no increase of Senju chakra, the power of 6 paths produced by his connection with Senju Hashirama chakra still exists. Mastering the power of 6 paths, although his Susanoo is the same height as the Susanoo in the battle at this time, his combat ability is stronger. And without turning into armor, wearing it on wooden golem, his full body Susanoo's wings are also available. As the wings of chakra, which covered the sky and the sun, spread, Susanoo immediately flew through the air like a flying dragon. Hashirama, lend me your chakra. As soon as Uchiha Madara finished speaking, the cyborg Senju Hashirama immediately deployed all chakra into a type that Uchiha Madara could control. Air combat. No doubt BFCG, as Uchiha Madara who pilots Susanoo is better at. After all, his wood-style products are too heavy. Except for the wooden dragon move, other wood-style products do not have the ability to fly. As for the conversion of chakra, even after Uzumaki Naruto becomes Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, he can freely deploy Nine-Tails chakra for anyone to use, and the artificial human Senju Hashirama can naturally do it. Especially when the two chakra are connected, it is easy to transform the power of 6 paths Yang into the 5 of 6 paths Yin. With massive 6 paths level Chatran support, Uchiha Madara formed a mudra with both hands. Susanoo Tengai Shinsei. When Susanoo soared into the sky, 9 meteorites, as huge as islands, had already fallen from the sky and fell towards Carl. Tempest Kick. Carl turned and kicked. The celestial magic weapon that combines natural energy is released, and it merges with the chopping wave, smashing 4 island-like meteorites in a row. But at this time, Uchiha Madara had already driven Susanoo over. With Senju Hashirama's huge Chatanla, his Susanoo also has an incredible boost. The Yang force of 6 paths has greatly strengthened Susanoo's defense and destructive power. Pulled out by Susanoo, the long chakra knife in his hand also glowed with a golden light, and with a sweep from the air, the thick dark clouds stretching for several kilometers were cut open immediately. Even Carl, who was at a high altitude, was blasted to a higher place by the chakra slash released by Susanoo, and his head hit the meteorite falling from the sky. Fire-style Yasaka no Tama. Uchiha Madara formed seals with both hands, and when Susanoo threw out the Papa Yasaka's Gobama, which was composed of several gobade with a radius of more than 100 meters, at the same time, he also spit out hot flames, covering each guba. Bang! When fire-style Yasaka's Guyu submerged into Carl's body, it instantly turned into a flame explosion that destroyed the world together with the meteorite. Occupying the sky, the black cloud chopped to pieces by Susanoo also exploded abnormally, and was directly dyed into a fire cloud. Madara, your attack seems to be working. Cyborg Senju Hashirama praised Uchiha Madara excitedly. Without Sage Mode, he could no longer perceive Carl's breath in that powerful explosion without super perception. Yes, it really worked. Before Uchiha Madara could speak, a figure appeared on Susanoo's head out of thin air, and they looked at each other face to face. At the same time, a joking ridicule came into their ears. It works Uchiha Madara roared, and Susanoo suddenly raised the chakra-long knife to cut it off, but Carl had already taken a step ahead, and kicked Susanoo's head at close range. A slashing wave that spanned the sky and was even bigger than Susanoo's body, wrapped in black streamer, first tore apart Susanoo's armor, then sliced off Susanoo's face, neck, and body, and finally knocked her from a distance of several thousand meters. It blasted straight into the ground from high altitude. Bang! There was a loud noise all day long, and the originally relatively calm sea exploded hundreds of meters high in an instant, creating a turbulent sea like a tsunami. Blocked. Lying in the depths of the sea, Uchiha Madara saw that although Susanoo's body and face had a hideous knife edge, they were not completely cut open. This made his tense heart slightly relieved. As long as it wasn't smashed by one blow, what he feared most was that Susanoo would be smashed to pieces like tofu in front of Carl. After all, Carl did a lot of things like this. Chapter 292 The Last Sage Art Wood Style Part 2 Please subscribe. Compared to the Fourth War, Tongli and Chakra have indeed improved greatly. After being able to carry my foot in the front, it didn't break. It's really good. Just when Uchiha Madara was secretly thankful that Susanoo was not broken, a bright blue light suddenly came into the eyes of Uchiha Madara and the artificial human Senju Hashirama. Puff. Under the rapidly shrinking eyes of the two, the Wang Yanghai they were in was like a sliced birthday cake, being cut open abruptly by a huge chopping wave. The endless turbulent seawater unexpectedly did not regroup at all within a short period of time, refilling the gap in the split sea. Without the barrier of the majestic sea water, Carl's figure flashed, rolled up bursts of sharp and ear-piercing sonic booms, fell from the sky at a frightening speed, and landed in front of Uchiha Madara. Although Susanoo is blocked and protected by the diamond-shaped chakra crystal with the strongest defense all over the body, both Uchiha Madara and the artificial man Senju Hashirama feel cold hands and feet when they see Carl, and their heart rate keeps increasing. Obviously, Susanoo's protection did not bring them the slightest sense of security. Wood-style wood dragon technique. Cyborg Senju Hashirama looked at Carl, who was close at hand, and he didn't dare to give the opponent a chance to make a move. Although without the perception under Sage Mode, his reaction was much slower, but he still condensed 3 huge wooden dragons at the first time, wrapped around Susanoo's waist, and bit Carl one after another. Boom. Carl clenched the substance tightly and punched out with a fist. The surging sea current that was about to gather together blasted a spherical area with a diameter of more than a kilometer from the middle on the spot. Within this area, there is no way for seawater to flow in backwards. Click. The oncoming wooden dragons are like pieces of wood that have been thrown into a wood crusher, and they have been crushed into wood residue just after being made by Senju Hashirama. Susanoo, who was already in the deep sea, was affected even more and was blasted deeper into the seabed. Fist bone meteor. Without the blocking of the wooden dragon, Susanoo was hit hard again. The indestructible body was already covered with fragmented cracks, and it seemed that it would be broken into pieces at any moment. What makes the hearts of Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama gradually sink to the bottom is that Carl's punches this time are different from the previous ones. The black streamer aura that symbolizes armament hockey and the black-red lightning entwined by conquerors burst out at the same time, winding around the fist. Susanoo. Unstoppable. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara turned pale. Armed colors, conquerors, are cast at the same time. He already sensed that Carl was determined to kill. Sage mode. On. Suddenly, the android Senju Hashirama gave a cold shout. The disappearing fairy face reappeared. Hashirama, what are you doing? Did you forget? Sage art is just sending natural energy to Carl's black sword body. Seeing this, Uchiha Madara thought that the artificial man Senju Hashirama was hopeless, so he simply ignored everything. Send energy. I don't think so. The android Senju Hashirama didn't know what to notice, and squeezed a slightly ugly smile on his face. What do you mean? Does sage art work? Asked Uchiha Madara. Ordinary sage art is indeed ineffective, it is just sending the power of nature to Mr. Carl, but the absorption of the power of nature by his black sword body is not omnipotent. A purely physical attack, he might not be able to absorb it. Quote. Ask for flowers. Cyborg Senju Hashirama clapped his hands together. In other words, it's not that he doesn't want to analyze, but that he doesn't dare to test. Uchiha Madara said in a deep voice. Just like Rinnegan, although it can absorb all ninjutsu and senjutsu, it cannot absorb pure physical properties, such as mud, stones, and trees. After all, Carl's strength itself surpassed the two of them. Once he used sage art to test, even if it only improved Carl's black sword body by a tiny bit. This is all devastating disaster news. But what if you lose the bet? Purely physical. Yes, maybe it is. Although he also agrees with the judgment of the artificial man Senju Hashirama, but before the result comes out, who knows whether the body of Heidao is the same as that of Rinnegan, which cannot absorb purely physical attacks. This is my strongest and last sage art wood style N. The reason why the previous sage art couldn't break through his black knife body was because you used your Susanoo, chakra sword, and other ninjutsu sage art. This time, I will deal with him with purely physical sage art without any energy. Cyborg Senju Hashirama paused every word. Uchiha Madara found that he was really a little bit blind. After realizing that Carl's black sword body could absorb the natural energy in sage art, he was afraid and didn't go deeper into analysis, judgment, and measurement. The huge fairy art chakra surged out, Wang Yang, the sea and Buddha were all affected, and the endless water began to boil. Yeah, I'm betting he can't absorb pure sage art wood style. After the android Senju Hashirama finished speaking, he took a bottle with both hands again. You're just gambling. The unfathomable celestial art chakra unreservedly vents out. If yes, that's fine. Chapter 293 Sage Art Wood Style The Arrival of the Divine Tree Part 3 Request Subscription. What if you lose the bet? You should be very clear about this scale of Sage Art Wood Style. Once Carl can absorb it, how far will his black knife body be upgraded? At that time, we will have no chance of winning. Quote. Uchiha Madara felt the determination in Senju Hashirama's words and sighed inwardly. It's come to this time, do you think we have other options besides taking a gamble? Cyborg Senju Hashirama asked back. Uchiha Madara couldn't help being silent when he heard the words. Indeed, there are only two paths before them. Either take a gamble and die if you lose the bet, or run away and fail the mission, 400, and be killed by Sixian. Instead of choosing the latter and fleeing in disgrace, he would rather choose the former. Likewise, the android Senju Hashirama is the same idea. Since there is none, let's enjoy my last sage art wood style. The cyborg Senju Hashirama smiled brightly, and the celestial chakra in his body was squeezed out crazily without any reservation. Sage art wood style The divine tree comes. Bang. The sea and the land began to vibrate at the same time. The majestic water flowing in the Wangyang Sea was inexplicably pulled, and lost the influence of gravity. With a deafening bang, it soared into the sky, sweeping a shocking wave hundreds of meters high. Immediately afterwards, the land at the deepest part of the seabed split apart with a bang, and a huge and majestic wooden mountain rose up from the sea, a few kilometers high and stretching for nearly 10 kilometers. Puff. At the same time, on the wooden mountain, an indescribably huge sacred tree grew rapidly, expanded, and finally broke through countless layers of clouds and mist, and reached a height enough to overlook the entire ninja world and all the small mountains at a glance. Down. God tree. It's even more visually impactful than what you can see. When Carl saw this scene, his fists were slightly paused. Although this scene has already been seen in observation hockey's foresight, but when I saw it with my own eyes, I felt even more shocked. It has to be said that Shion really created a monster. No, it should be said that the artificial human Senju Hashirama created by Sixian can't reach this level at all. The key is that this artificial human Senju Hashirama is connected to Uchiha Madara's chakra. Push wood style to an unprecedented height. In the past and future years, there are not a few Six Paths level powerhouses, but among these Six Paths level powerhouses, like the artificial man Senju Hashirama, wood style is used as the main combat ability, and all his thoughts are devoted to wood style. None of the. Although Sage of Six Paths knew wood style, he didn't use it much. Instead, he used a 10 tails that was as tall as a full body, Susanoo, which was 10,000 meters high. Otsutsuki Hamura's technique is biased towards body technique, even for pupil technique, it ends with Bion and Tenseigen. The same is true for the people of the Otsutsuki clan. The same is true for Naruto and Sasuke, who will be gifted with the power of Sage of Six Paths in the future. There are quite a few Six Paths level techniques, and no one has actually fought the Six Paths level wood style. Even Carl has never seen it. Until this time, the artificial human Senju Hashirama is connected with Uchiha Madara chakra, masters the power of Six Paths, and cooperates with Sage mode to finally display the Six Paths level wood style. Hashirama, is this really you? Uchiha Madara looked at the unattainable height under his feet, the sacred tree overlooking the entire ninja world, and when he looked at the artificial human Senju Hashirama, Sangoku Rinnegan was covered by the color of his face. He knew that the artificial man Senju Hashirama, like the dead Senju Hashirama in his memory, likes to hide and clumsy, and will not show all his strength until the last moment. Just like the main body Senju Hashirama has hidden a trick through several thousand hands. The artificial man in front of him, Senju Hashirama, also hides a trick that the tree of gods descends. Madara, please see my last wood style. If I lose, you run and don't care about anything. Don't look for Mr. Carl, and don't be found by C. Shion. Come to think of it, even if Mr. C. Shion chased you down, as long as you have the heart to dodge, you should be able to dodge. After all, you are not like me, with no worries, and as for Mr. Carl, as long as you don't mess around, after he killed Hashirama, an artificial human that shouldn't exist, he shouldn't be chasing you all over the world. The cyborg Senju Hashirama turned his back to Uchiha Madara, as if he was giving his last words before dying. Hashirama, Uchiha Madara's heart tightened. Mr. Carl. The android Senju Hashirama ignored Uchiha Madara, but stared resolutely at Carl, who stepped on the moonwalk, soared from the sea in a blink of an eye, rushed to an altitude of 10,000 meters, and confronted him. Cyborg Senju Hashirama. Carl first glanced at the giant god-tier tree in front of him, and a happy smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Such wood style, I approve of you. As soon as the voice fell, it was more violent than a typhoon, and the conqueror's haki, which was 4.6 strong enough to shake the sky, spread out mightily. It is an honor to be recognized by you. But I'm very greedy, I hope to do things that the body can't do. That is to give you a taste of defeat. The cyborg Senju Hashirama felt the conqueror's haki released from Carl, constantly impacting his spirit and body, and his heart shivered, but he didn't flinch. Does it taste like defeat? This is really so strange to me that I can only feel it through fantasy. If you can do it, try it. Carl laughed. Chapter 294 The Conflict Between Conqueror's Haki and the Power of Ashura, Part 4. Please subscribe. Let me see, the strongest power of ninja heroes. Facing Carl with haki skyrocketing, the cyborg Senju Hashirama didn't say any more, and the 10,000-meter sacred tree under his feet suddenly looked like the 10-tails sacred tree that ravaged the ninja world 1,000 years ago and almost destroyed the planet, went berserk. The terrifying momentum spread from the sacred tree and collided with Carl's conqueror's haki like never before. Uchiha Madara on the side can clearly see that the black conqueror's haki and the green power of the sacred tree, or the power of Ashura, had an unprecedented conflict at an altitude of 10,000 meters. The wind is raging, and the waves are raging. The dark clouds entrenched in the sky were affected and turned into a vortex-like and tornado-like vision of heaven and earth. One after another, the extremely ferocious lightning, like a black dragon piercing the sky, soars and dances wantonly in the sky of ninja world. Neither of them made a move, and neither of their powers launched an ultimate collision. Just the conflict between the released conqueror's haki and the power of the sacred tree has already caused a huge change in the sky of the ninja world. At this moment, Konoha in the land of fire, Konoha sub-villages of the other 415 villages, and Konoha high levels in different countries, the ninjas all involuntarily looked up at the strange scene in the sky where the night fell. Has the battle started? Konoha, on top of the Hokage rock, Tsunade stepped on the Hokage rock of Sarutobi Hiruzen, looking at the strange scene in the distance with beautiful eyes. Although her observation haki can't perceive such a distant place, she knows that Carl is breaking out an unprecedented battle with artificial people Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. It can trigger such a movement that shakes the 5 kingdoms of the ninja world, only Master Carl. Who is he fighting? Uchiha Madara shouldn't be able to fight Carl-sama to this extent. I really can't think of anyone in the ninja world who can fight Carl-sama so brilliantly. At the same time, Uzumaki Kushina, Konoha Sannin, Golden Flash, Inoshi Kacho, Uchiha Madara Shisui, Uchiha Fugaku and others in Shikoku Ninja Village all looked up at the distant sky in unison. The vision of heaven and earth from afar made them feel extremely shocked, and at the same time, it also made them think about it. They were all curious about who in the ninja world could fight Carl to this extent. Such an existence, in every memory, does not seem to exist. In addition to Tsunade who already knew the inside story, even Uzumaki Kushina was a little confused. Who is Uncle Carl fighting with? If it is not for guarding the Konoha branch village, especially when such a change of heaven and earth occurs, it is even more impossible to leave at will. Uzumaki Kushina has directly shown that Kurama mode is flying towards the source of the vision of heaven and earth at this time. After all, after turning on Kurama mode, she can also fly. Kurama. Just when Uzumaki Kushina was extremely curious, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. A familiar cage and the figure of Nine Tails appeared in her sight. It's better not to go there, or you won't know how to die. After Kurama pulled Uzumaki Kushina in, the first sentence was spoken. Why? Uzumaki Kushina became more curious after hearing this. The power of six paths. During that battle, I felt that someone was using the Sage of Six Paths that they could only use, the power of six paths. Although not as powerful as Sage of Six Paths and the others, the difference is only in quantity and strength, which is essentially the power of a category. Beyond the chakra of humans, and beyond the chakra of tailed beasts. Kurama said in a low tone. Do you know who it is? Uzumaki Kushina couldn't help asking. Who else but that B*********** D. Carl? Kurama said firmly. Of course I know it's the guy who fought Uncle Carl. Uzumaki Kushina has no airway. It should be Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama. Nine Tails frowned, his tone a little uncertain. Forget about Uchiha Madara, isn't Shodai dead? Even if he didn't die, it's impossible to team up with Uchiha Madara to besiege Uncle Carl. Uchiha Madara was killed by Shodai after all. Uzumaki Kushina listened with an itchy heart. Nine Tails' tone was full of puzzlement. You are going to die anyway, so don't implicate me. HMPH, what a beautiful idea. Nine Tails has a please go it expression. Not to mention the power of six paths, even the power of Indra and Ashura, they are incomplete, but now, these two are very strange. In his opinion, whether it is Uchiha Madara or artificial man Senju Hashirama, these descendants of Ashura and Indra, after thousands of years, their blood has become extremely thin, and they should not be like Indra and Ashura. But Uchiha Madara is so strange, he seems to be Indra reincarnated. After all, even if you let me out, with your pure blood vortex physique, you shouldn't be able to die for a while. You put it that way, I want to go there even more. But before you go, you can release me first. But after what Nine Tails said, although she was very curious, she still suppressed this impulse. Life is short, if you still want to take shortcuts, I don't mind. It's them right, but it doesn't seem to be them. This is where I am weird. Uzumaki Kushina snorted coldly, and directly rejected Nine Tails. Uzumaki Kushina stared at Nine Tails with wide eyes in shock. Let's not talk about Senju Hashirama. His strength should be 190 points away from Ashura at his peak. After all, Ashura got part of the inheritance of Sage of Six Paths after he became the heir of the ninja sect. The episode Truth-Seeking Ball, My Power, Wood Style, Six Paths Sage Ardor all in one, Chapter 295 3 Techniques in 1. Washuji, Wooden Golem, True Several Thousand Hands Part 5 requires subscription. The most powerful, just as countless ninjas from the five kingdoms of the ninja world were attracted by this battle that caused changes in the world. As the source of the changes in the world, facing the challenge of the artificial man Senju Hashirama, Carl gave the most direct response with an extremely powerful attitude. Response. Full U. The Conqueror's Haki, which swept across the 10,000-meter sky in the ninja world like a storm, became even more violent, carrying a powerful will to shake the ninja world, turning into shocking black and red lightning bolts around his right fist. Immediately afterwards, the armed color is released, in the shape of a black streamer, intertwined with the conquerors and reflecting each other, like two light dragons of different colors. However, Carl did not throw a punch, and on the basis of the armed color winding and conquerors winding, the majestic force of nature surged out like a tide. After Mount Myoboku and his party, he can not only manipulate the external force of nature at will, but also after making the force of nature compatible with Heidao's body, his body can also permanently store the force of nature just like storing haki and chakra stored in the body. At this time, he did not mobilize the natural power that permeates the entire ninja world at all, but directly mobilized the natural power stored in the body like haki, and fused with the armed colors and conquerors. Carl is really getting serious. Not just armor colors, but even the conquerors are compatible with the forces of nature. In other words, you are now facing immortal armor and immortal conquerors at the same time. Quote. Although it was Senju Hashirama who made the shot, he didn't just stand aside and stare blankly. In addition to providing chakra to the artificial human Senju Hashirama, he also uses his own 3-God Jade Rinnegan to observe the changes in Carl's body and haki all the time. Although after exiting Sage mode, his 4-point Jade Rinnegan also degenerates into 3-point Jade Rinnegan, but it is still no problem to see the changes of Carl's haki and the force of nature. Senju Armed Color and Senju Conquerors *#. Although the android Senju Hashirama was mentally prepared, after hearing Uchiha Madara's words, he felt uneasy. However, the arrow was on the string and had to be fired. The battle situation has reached the point where life and death are divided. Even if he wants to retreat, he has no choice but to retreat. Flower God Tree comes. Thinking of this, the cyborg Senju Hashirama tried his best to calm down the restlessness in his heart, and made a seal with his hands. Thousands of wood-style arms are instantly extended from the wooden mountain connected to the bottom and root of the sacred tree, like 3,000 wooden dragons soaring into the sky. Fist bone meteor swarm. Carl was like an eagle hitting the sky, and raised his hand to strike down condescendingly. A total of 3,000 wooden arms were coming through the air, and when they were about to submerge him, they stopped forcibly without exception when they were not far from his body. Boom. In the next second, circles of shock cannons with black streamers and black and red lightning surged down from a height of 10,000 meters like ripples and waves. When the two's attacks collided, there was no earth-shattering explosion, nor a loud noise that shook the ninja world, but only the water ripple like shock wave passed by, and all the wooden arms were smashed into sawdust without exception. It's not over yet. The artificial human Senju Hashirama's face is a little pale, and his forehead is covered with fine beads of sweat. Even if it is Sage body, even Sage mode, a Sage art wood style of this scale still has an extremely huge burden for him. I still have this. Then it is extremely laborious to raise your hand, not to raise a single finger. So that's how it is. Sacred tree. Haha, it's really an amazing wood style, it can actually affect my body. His body is like being in a space with 100 times the gravity, and it is difficult to move and beg. Like a boa constrictor, countless tree roots stretched out at the same time. Before refining his body into a black knife, as that good he still experienced pain and fatigue, but after refining the body of the black knife, especially after going through the trip to Mount Myoboku, he thought that unless the Six Paths brothers were resurrected, the peak Otsutsuki Kagaya from the period appeared, otherwise it would be difficult for him to experience the feeling of fatigue, pain, uncontrollable body, etc. that he experienced in the Sengoku era. This Sage art wood style is simply a greatly enhanced version of Flower Tree Realm Arrival, Wooden Golem, and True several thousand hands in one. However, when faced with such a situation, Carl's face not only showed no panic, but showed a rare look of excitement. But he never thought that Senju Hashirama's Sage art wood style Sacred Tree arrival, based on the Ten Tails Sacred Tree, would bring him a huge surprise. With the terrifying body shape of the divine tree, even if it just moves a little, the ground below will inevitably cause a huge shock, and the sea will shake up the sky shattering waves. Although this wave is not even 1/10 of the height of the divine tree itself, but still scary. Carl just wanted to punch, but suddenly found that his body had never been different. When these flowers were in full bloom, a pollen storm enveloped the sky, like a typhoon passing by, and like a cloud covering the sky, clustered on countless papers and swept towards Carl at the same time. At the same time, every huge tree root, which is bigger than a wooden dragon, has brightly colored self-flowers that exude a dangerous atmosphere. This feeling, tisk tisk, numbness, immobility, so strange that I thought I would never have it again in this life. Quote. His body was abnormal, and his limbs couldn't be controlled, causing his body to fall from a height of 10,000 meters in an instant. Shish. As the artificial man Senju Hashirama yelled, the sacred tree under his feet moved. The storm-like, cloud-like pollen that submerged all areas in sight, even he could not help but feel a long-lost, almost unfamiliar feeling of paralysis. Chapter 296 True Senju Supernatural Powers Part 6. It worked. Hashirama, it really worked this time. Uchiha Madara saw Carl falling straight down from the 10,000-meter sky, his face was full of excitement. People who didn't know thought it was his technique that worked. If that doesn't work, we're both dead this time. The android Senju Hashirama panted heavily with a pale face. Obviously, manipulating the descending of the divine tree to launch a series of attacks just now is an extremely heavy burden for him. Whether it's mental or physical, Shanju chakra can't keep up. Even if Sage body's chakra is huge and the recovery speed is astonishing, this moment cannot make ends meet. However, we can't be too happy too early. It's just that the poisonous pollen from the sacred tree is effective. This paralyzing and dizzying effect won't last long. The artificial man Senju Hashirama said so, but he couldn't help showing a smile on his pale face. Fighting so far, their technique is the first time it really works. Or since Carl came out, he is the only one who can shake Carl's body. This is the sky of more than 10,000 meters. His body can't move, and if he fell down like this 600, he will be useless if he doesn't die. Uchiha Madara glanced down. Although there are many clouds and mist blocking him, his three-god Jade Rinnegan has strong insight. He clearly saw Carl's figure rapidly shrinking in his line of sight, until he was about to disappear completely from sight, and the other party was still unable to move. Look. Think too much. Although it is scary to fall over 10,000 meters, for Mr. Carl, it is very good to be able to break through the defense. This is based on the fact that the pollen poison of my sacred tree is extremely corrosive, otherwise even if he does not move, even if Hokage does not use it and falls directly from a height of 10,000 meters, he will still be unscathed. Cyborg Senju Hashirama shook his head. He is not as naive as Uchiha Madara. Although he doesn't have pupil skills, he clearly realizes how pervert Carl's physique is. Refined into the body of a black sword, especially after absorbing a large amount of natural force and undergoing an incredible transformation, the strength of the body is simply inhuman. In terms of physical strength alone, no one in the entire ninja world can compare with Carl. In his opinion, even the unfathomable Jixian cannot compare with Carl in body. It's good to break the defense. After Carl came out of the mountain, I played 2 games with him, but I never broke his defense. Now it is finally able to shake this guy's monster physique. Quote. Uchiha Madara breathed a sigh of relief. In his opinion, as long as he can break through the defense, it means that this person can be defeated and killed. He is afraid of Carl's physical strength, which is almost endless. Regardless of sage art, wood style, pupil art, all arts cannot be shaken. Just shaking isn't enough, we don't have time to spend with Mr. Carl. Mr. Carl has a lot of time and energy to spend with us, but we don't. For the coming, not to mention that it is difficult to last, even if it can. Do you think the same BFBD technique can still have such a good effect as just now? The android Senju Hashirama shook his head with a heavy face, then raised his hand and pointed at the rapidly falling Carl. What's more, the next is my final blow. As soon as these words came out, Uchiha Madara's expression changed. The joy and excitement of the good news that shook Carl's body was gone in an instant. He naturally knows exactly what the artificial man Senju Hashirama means. The next blow, no matter what the result is the limit. If you can't beat Carl in one go, there's no point in breaking the defense. After all, breaking the defense, being injured is not the same thing as being defeated, losing combat effectiveness, or even dying. Bet everything on my Senju Hashirama, this is the real tree descending. The android Senju Hashirama's breathing became more and more rapid. As he spoke, he raised his hand vigorously and aimed at Carl's palm for a condescending clap. Boom. Thousands of roots, each bigger than a wooden dragon and taller than a Susanoo, swept out from the roots and chased after Carl, who fell from the sky and fell rapidly towards the ocean. Sage Art Wood Style God Tree Arrival True Senju Avatar. The android Senju Hashirama roared, blood spurting from his mouth. At the same time, countless tree roots that fell from the sky suddenly gathered together, meandering and circling together, and finally turned into a wood-style bergamot that can cover the sky, even the sun and moon in the sky of Ninja World. All the majestic and huge force affected the storm that swept tens of kilometers to catch up with Carl. What a amazing wood style. Looking at the wood-style bergamot close at hand, although Carl couldn't move, it didn't affect him admiring Senju Hashirama's trick from the bottom of his heart. The divine tree comes. It is true that the divine tree has descended. Finally, gather the power of the sacred tree, and use true several thousand hands to condense into a giant hand that can hold the moon in the ninja world. This move wood-style sage art completely surpassed the Buddha on the top. Boom. After a sigh of admiration, Carl's body was crushed by the wood-style Buddha's palm, which was so big that it was boundless and more terrifying than the land and ocean below, and then fell straight down to the vast and boundless ocean. Chapter 297 Tearing the Sky, Tilting the Ocean Part 1 for subscription. Boom. When the wood-style Buddha palm fell from a height of 10,000 meters and touched Wangyang Sea, all the seawater with a radius of tens of kilometers rose up in an instant, separated from the land, and was all shaken to the sky. Once the unspeakable mighty force was unleashed, farther areas were affected. The land carrying Wangyang Sea tilted a little bit, and countless seawater turned into turbulent waves, and they continued to go further and further away. But all the borders of countries that are connected to this sea have encountered the tsunami without exception. This is also why Carl, the artificial man Senju Hashirama, and Uchiha Madara have moved the battlefield to high altitudes, to the center of the ninja ocean, otherwise what would be triggered would not be a tsunami, but a crack in the land of the ninja. Hashirama, was this really your fault? Uchiha Madara stared blankly at an ocean below that seemed to have been cleaned by dozens of nuclear bombs. He knows that it is definitely not just a small area in the line of sight that is affected. Nearly 100 kilometers of ocean were directly emptied by the wood-style Buddha's palm, turning it into an area without seawater filling, and the sea farther away, and even the land connected to the sea, will inevitably suffer a huge impact. One blow tears the sky apart, and the ocean pours down. Such power is simply not something he can possess. Even if he brings the full 9 tails over, enters Sage mode, and activates the 4-God Jade Rinnegan, it will definitely not be able to cause 1/10 of the damage. It wasn't caused by me. After I developed it, I used it once, and its power is not even 1/10 of what it is now. The artificial human Senju Hashirama was struggling to stand up at this time, so he had to rely on Uchiha Madara to open Susanoo and fly him down from a height of 10,000 meters. This is caused by the joint strength of you and me. Before Uchiha Madara could speak, the cyborg Senju Hashirama interrupted. I think you also noticed just now that when you and I open our hearts and connect with chakra, an unprecedented power will be triggered. I think this should be the power of 6 paths. That is, the ancient times when Sage of 6 paths ran rampant in the ninja world, to fight against and even seal the power of 10 tails. It is precisely because of this power. Your 3-Goat Jade Rinnegan can evolve into a 4-Goose Jade Rinnegan, and my wood-style sage art can be geometrically improved, so that I can display the magic of the scale in front of me the tree descends. Without the power of 6 paths, the power of this divine tree descending would be reduced by at least 10 times. His words made Uchiha Madara involuntarily touch his eyes. Sengoku Rinnegan. Although these eyes were suppressed miserably in front of Carl, even Sengoku Rinnegan was no exception, but it is undeniable that these eyes have brought about unprecedented changes after being blessed by the power of 6 paths. It's not that Rinnegan is weak, and it's not that Rinnegan is not strong enough, it's just that Carl is too strong. You know what, Hashirama, Uchiha Madara's mind is like the sea at this moment, with ups and downs and thousands of emotions in his heart. What's wrong? The cyborg Senju Hashirama sat down on the wood-style Buddha's palm covering tens of kilometers. After Carl came out, I was thinking about rearranging the rankings between you, me, and him all the time. But in the end it failed. Whether it's Carl or you, after an era, I'm still behind you too. Uchiha Madara's tone was very complicated, as if he was a little bit depressed. Madara, I'm not alone. I know, this is inseparable from my chakra and pupil power. Maybe it is you who cast this technique, not me. Uchiha Madara shook her head. Anyway, we've beaten Mr. Carl now, haven't we? Cyborg Senju Hashirama knows how arrogant Uchiha Madara is. He knew that after the technique of descending the divine tree was performed, it would inevitably have a huge impact on Uchiha Madara's mind. What cares about is the victory, the result, not the process. He is a ninja, not a warrior, not a knight. When Uchiha Madara heard this, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The iron fist that dominated the ninja world for 2 full ages, and even continued to extend its hand to the 3rd age, was pulled down from the throne of heaven. Is he still alive? Hearing Uchiha Madara's emotion, when the android Senju Hashirama was about to speak, a burst of joking voices suddenly entered the ears of the two. Even if it was something that the two of them could do together, it was a success after all. Yeah, defeating Carl. In my past, this kind of thing can only happen in a dream. Although if he had a choice, he would prefer to defeat Carl alone, and he also wanted such a result, but when he found that such a result was so far away, he didn't mind teaming up. Regardless, they beat Carl. At the same time, the Senju Buddha palm under the two of them suddenly burst into countless shocking cracks. Not just the past, but even the present, or the future, this kind of thing can only happen in your dreams. In the next second, as bright aurora-like slashing waves rose towards the sky along the cracks, Carl's figure glowing black and blue, with a green dragon entangled around his waist, appeared in their eyes again. This voice. When Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama heard this, their faces changed drastically. Click. Indeed. As long as you win, that's fine. Chapter 298 You Surpassed Ashura, Part 2 Please subscribe. Carl. Watching Carl, Uchiha Madara and the artificial man Senju Hashirama slowly come out from under the pressure of Wood Styles Buddha's palm, their expressions became extremely gloomy, and at the same time, there was a hint of depression and powerlessness in the depths of their eyes. Even a Wood-style sage art that could tear the sky apart and tilt the ocean couldn't beat Carl. What else could they do? You are still alive. Uchiha Madara looked at Carl in disbelief. In his opinion, the blow of the artificial man Senju Hashirama just now can kill even the unfathomable Shion. He even thought about waiting for the end of this incident to trick the artificial man Senju Hashirama into joining forces with him to kill Shion directly, and then, 830, will take over everything from Otsutsuki, and then further collect tailed beasts and become 10 tails Jinchuriki, finally activate infinite Tsukuyomi. But all of this, with Wood Styles Buddha's palm cut off, Carl came out alive was a dream. Can't even Wood Style work on that scale. Cyborg Senju Hashirama's expression is ugly ultimate. This is already his last whole card. Wood Style that even Shion doesn't know. In fact, he never told anyone that this Wood Style move was not only for Carl, but also for Shion. If one day, Shion dares to touch his memory, or touch the people and things he cares about in his memory, then he will do everything he can to bring Shion to the Pure Land with this trick, the descending of the Divine Tree. It's just that I didn't expect that Carl couldn't be killed even when the Divine Tree descended. No, your technique worked. Really amazing Wood Style, much stronger than true several thousand hands. Even the body of the black knife that has absorbed the power of nature has been broken. It's really amazing, even the Shion who created you behind the scenes didn't expect you to have mastered such a thing's strength. Carl glanced down at his chest. A black and red crack appeared on it. It's just because of the color of Hideo's body, so if you don't pay attention, you really won't find an extra wound on his chest. Cyborg, ha ha ha, he just made you too perfect, that's why you become so powerful. Although you don't have the full body of 9 tails, to some extent, you are beyond Ashura. Quote. Carl is full of praise for the android Senju Hashirama. I have to say that Shion really created a perfect artificial human Senju Hashirama. On the basis of inheriting everything from Senju Hashirama, it will be optimized in all aspects, and it will be hidden in secret for an era. This is how the technique of descending the divine tree came into existence. So what? Whoever surpasses, in the end, not all of them can only lose to you. Cyborg Senju Hashirama laughs at himself. Does it make sense to surpass Senju's ancestor Ashura? Yes, but built on the premise of surpassing Carl. Not being able to surpass Carl, but simply surpassing Ashura, would mean nothing, at least in this moment. I said this to Madara and Balian before. Now give it to you too. Cyborg Senju Hashirama, come under me, okay. At least I can still live, not like now, dead. Carl glanced at the android Senju Hashirama, and said word by word. Dead. Cyborg Senju Hashirama smiled miserably. It's better to die by your hands than to die on the bed like the main body. It's just. Madara, can you let him go? He is different from me, I am an artificial human, but he is the real body. Mr. Shion didn't create the android Uchiha, he just created the android Senju Hashirama. After speaking, he looked straight at Carl. Leave Uchiha Madara alone. During the Sengoku era, I released him twice. In the Ninja Village era, I let him go once. Because anyway, between him and me, and Hashirama, there are only different ideas, different views, and different pursuits. But in the Fourth Ninja World War, he completely let me down. Quote. Carl held up 3 fingers. It's only 3 things, I've already let him go 3 times. This time, even I can't find a reason to let him go, I can't think of a reason that can convince me to let him go. Back then, I watched him walk out of the coffin in the Hokage cemetery, so today I should put him back in the coffin myself. Quote. Facing the expectant gaze of the android Senju Hashirama, Carl shook his head. If it was before, he might still find an excuse, put some water, and let Uchiha Madara escape. After all, he has done this kind of thing 3 times in the past. But as Uchiha Madara dug Senju Hashirama's heart and grave, he really couldn't find a reason to let him go. If it weren't for the lack of time, he has no doubt that it is not only Senju Hashirama who has been dug up in 3.0, but Senju Tobirama, who has a deep hatred with Uchiha Madara, will even be destroyed. But, needless to say, Carl, although I, Uchiha Madara, can't beat you, it's not enough to beg for your mercy just to survive. The cyborg Senju Hashirama still wanted to persuade, Uchiha Madara had already categorically shouted angrily. He is a ninja Shira, when did Uchiha An fall to the point where he needs to beg for forgiveness from Carl? Isn't that just losing? Anyway, he lost 2 eras, lost for a lifetime, and didn't check it once. As for being killed, he was stabbed once by Senju Hashirama, and he was stabbed once by Carl. Chapter 299 Get Lost. Never Let Me See You Part 3 Please subscribe. Hey, this guy Madara. Cyborg Senju Hashirama glanced at Uchiha Madara and sighed inwardly. Although Uchiha Madara's grave and heart were dug out by the main body, not his artificial human, but he still felt a little empathy. If they beat Carl today, will Uchiha Madara do something similar to him one day? But is he supposed to watch Uchiha Madara die? Under Sixian's black hands, he has already lost Carl's memory and emotion, and he doesn't want to lose another one. You should know it's not in my character to sit still. Want to take my life? Yes, take out your iron fist. Uchiha Madara reaches out and claps. With a bang, summoning released the Uchiha fan and a sickle. These are the weapons he used in the Sengoku era. Although it has not been used for many years, but now he wants to take it out. 15 without him. Die decently. Uchiha fan. Seeing this familiar fan, Carl's eyes moved slightly. The scene of meeting Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama came to his mind. Good chance. A gleam flashed in Uchiha Madara's eyes, that's what he wanted. Although it's unreasonable to do so, ninjas are also tricky. He didn't mind doing a little bit more, as long as it was useful. Anyway, from the moment he dug Senju Hashirama's grave and dug out the opponent's heart, he had already crossed the last bottom line. Now it's just using the Uchiha fan to bring back Carl's memories, it would be better if he could lose his mind. But now it seems that the effect is better than he imagined. Carl seemed to have compassion for himself. Snapped. Just when Uchiha Madara was going to do it while Carl saw Uchiha's round fan and lost his mind for a moment, the artificial man Senju Hashirama on the side suddenly grabbed his wrist. Hashirama. Uchiha Madara was a little annoyed and puzzled at first, but he was stunned for a second. He felt an exuberant chakra connected to his chakra. Haven't you almost run out of chakra? Uchiha Madara froze. The arrival of the sacred tree just now has already consumed almost all of the chakra of the android Senju Hashirama. Why is there such a chakra all of a sudden? Promise me one thing. Cyborg Senju Hashirama grinned miserably. You say. When Uchiha Madara looked up at the android Senju Hashirama, the whole person was hit hard. The face of Senju Hashirama, an android who was originally extremely young, is aging at an alarming rate. Seeing the change of the artificial man Senju Hashirama, he only felt a blockage in his heart. He is obviously a man-made human, and he has only known each other for a short time, but run and don't look back. After the android Senju Hashirama finished speaking, his body limply fell to the ground, but that hand still tightly grasped Uchiha Madara. At the beginning, I failed to resist Mr. Sixian, lost my bond with Mr. Carl, and even became a tool to kill Mr. Carl. I don't want to have this kind of thing a second time. But even if you are allowed to leave, Mr. Sixian will not let you go. Madara, this is the last thing I, Hashirama, an artificial human, can do for you. After finishing speaking, he let go of Uchiha Madara's hand, and at the same time, he had turned into a dying old man who looked like a bone. Since you are connected to my chakra, but triggered the power of 6 paths, what if my chakra merges with your chakra and consumes all my chakra DE 10 times? Hehe, this force might be able to defeat Mr. Sixian. Unfortunately, I can't see it. As he lay dying, the android Senju Hashirama took one last look at Carl. Sorry, Mr. Carl, obviously I know that you used to be my most important friend, but everything about you, as well as my feelings for you, are all gone. In my eyes, you are just a stranger, even if I wave a butcher knife at you, I will not hesitate. If you can, let Madara go, this is the last bond between you and me, and the dead body. Anyway, he can't pose any threat to you. The power I keep in his body. It is also to prevent Mr. Sixian from killing him after the mission fails. The artificial man Senju didn't open his mouth when he saw that, but thought silently in his heart. Based on his understanding of Uchiha Madara's character, he knows that what he said, Uchiha Madara's arrogance cannot accept this kind of 530 shameful way of living. At least in Uchiha Madara's opinion this is a disgraceful way of living. Cyborg Hashirama. Hey, as the android Senju Hashirama thought, Carl read his memory. Things from the past in the Sengoku era came to mind again. Yes, in this age, among the living, Uchiha Madara is his last bond. Even if this fetter has long been torn by Uchiha Madara. But if Uchiha Madara is really killed, he has really become a real loner in this ninja world. He has no friends, relatives, or even enemies, but only himself. This is the last time. Get out. Never let me see you. Although there are many thoughts and complicated thoughts in the heart, the time outside is just a breath of time. In the end, Carl let out a long sigh, and without looking at Uchiha Madara, who had a cloudy expression on his face, he walked towards the land of fire without looking back. He was afraid that if he looked at Uchiha Madara one more time, he would change his mind and slap this man to death. Chapter 300 Why Don't You Run? Madara, 4th more subscription required. You are begging him. Uchiha Madara stood in place, looking at the android Senju Hashirama who had closed his eyes. Even if I don't know observation haki, I know that you must be begging him before you die. Otherwise, Carl would never show any compassion, let alone let me go. It's a pity that the artificial man Senju Hashirama has no consciousness, and there is no way to answer him. The arrival of the sacred tree has already exhausted the artificial human Senju Hashirama chakra, and finally directly squeezed the life of sage body, and the chakra in exchange directly made Senju Hashirama go from being severely injured to exhausted. After seeing Carl let Uchiha Madara go, the last concern in his heart was also let go, and naturally he couldn't hold on any longer. Unfortunately, you underestimated me Uchiha Madara. I don't need pity from others, let alone charity from others. If you want me to live in humiliation, I would rather die in battle. Uchiha Madara suddenly raised his head to the sky and roared. The power of Indra and the power of Ashura were perfectly fused together, and after the fusion, a brand new chakra was born, but at the same time as this new chakra was born, the artificial man Senju Hashirama injected into his body before his death the power of Ashura disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, what he got in return was that his aura rose steadily at a frightening speed. Affected by his aura, the already undercurrent was surging, and the undulating sea became more turbulent and surging, and even a huge vortex-shaped hole appeared in the sky out of thin air. Carl, who was walking away on the waves, suddenly stopped. When he turned his head and looked towards Uchiha Madara, he found that Uchiha Madara's body surface had been covered by green light visible to the naked eye. The power of Ashura and the power of Indra are not connected, but fused. Carl's eyes flashed red, and the observation haki was put down, clearly sensing the changes in Uchiha Madara's body. 2 strands of chakra are merging, and one of them, exuding vitality, disappears at a speed visible to the naked eye. Heavy particle mode. This change in Shiyu Zebo Madara's body made Carl reflexively think of a power that can match, even crush Otsutsuki. Heavy particle mode. 2 strands of Nine Tails level chakra are fused together to permanently consume 1, or even 2 strands of chakra, in exchange for a whole new power. Although this power can exist for an extremely short time, not to mention fleeting, but the time of existence is also very short. However, it is undeniable that this mode is enough for Uzumaki Naruto, who was crushed by Otsutsuki, to have the power to counter-crush Otsutsuki in an instant. In the case of Shiyu Zebo Madara, Uzumaki Naruto and Nine Tails teamed up to open the heavy particle mode. The difference is that it is not the chakra and life of Nine Tails that are burned, but the vitality and chakra of the artificial human Senju Hashirama. So that's the case, because I just realized that the connection between Indra and Ashura's power will generate the power of 6 paths, so I thought of merging. Heavy particle mode. I didn't expect that before you died, it was a coincidence fiddled with this thing. You are truly a genius. Cyborg Senju Hashirama. Quote. Carl recalls the thoughts that passed before the death of the android Senju Hashirama. Heavy particle mode. Do you think it's my current posture? Uchiha Madara took a step forward, and appeared in front of Carl out of thin air across a distance of 1,000 meters as if teleporting. In the past, he didn't have the sage body like Senju Hashirama, and he didn't have the physique of Carl. In terms of physical skills, he didn't have this kind of movement speed, but now he is ridiculously fast. Even the speed of the Sage Art Boil style mode that Senju Hashirama turned on during his lifetime is far slower than the current Uchiha Madara. Fuse 2 strands of chakra to generate brand new energy, sacrifice life and chakra, and release a lot of energy in an instant. Carl said lightly. Have you seen? Uchiha Madara frowned slightly. This kind of power was also created by the artificial man Senju Hashirama before his death. In theory, even the artificial man Senju Hashirama himself did not know the result. Similarly, he himself didn't figure out what was going on in his body for a while. But Carl seems to be very familiar with it, and even has seen this pattern. I've seen it. Carl nodded. What a disappointment. I thought I would give you a surprise. Uchiha Madara curled his lips, but the green chakra that was clustered around his body had already turned into a chakra coat. This chakra coat, for the money, is almost identical in form to the wooden golem. It was enough to surprise me. Cyborg Senju Hashirama really left you with something nice. It's a pity. He paid by mistake after all. Quote. After witnessing the changes in Uchiha Madara, Carl's eyes lit up. At this time, Uchiha Madara is completely different from before, just like the artificial man Senju Hashirama who just opened the descending of the sacred tree, has the qualifications to threaten his physical defense in a real sense. Madara, why don't you run? You should listen to the artificial man Hashirama and run, as far as you can. Never show up in front of me. Carl paused without saying a word.